What small habit about someone else raises a red flag and makes you distrust them? When they talk mad trash about everyone around them to you, and since it's all nonsense, you just let it go in one ear and out the other, but then the moment you vent a frustration, they run and tell everyone this exaggerated story which makes you look awful, and the whole time you know they're at the fire starter, but you can't say anything without looking petty. And that's how I quit my job. You'll have fun with that. When they can't be happy when their friends succeed in the ways they haven't. If your jealousy is that profound, I don't want to be around you. One better syndrome, where no matter what your experience, your history, or your anecdote is, theirs is better, worse, or funnier. When I was younger, we called them the one-uppers. When someone borrows something and never even attempts to return it or mention it until you bring it up. Not respecting my decision when I say no to something small. Thank you for letting me know that you don't respect boundaries. When they put a lot of energy into manipulating people instead of just living their lives. Many have pointed out that what I'm describing is not a small thing. Overall, that's true. However, what I'm talking about is the small, subtle efforts these people make throughout the day. That's what came to mind for me when considering the question. When they don't respect people's boundaries, borrowing things without asking personal questions when you're not close, borrowing a small amount of money and not paying it back, stuff like that. They constantly talk crap about others, but all the stories are skewed to their favor. I watch my mouth around people like that and try to only say things that I don't mind getting out. Bonus points if they add how these people are positively influenced by the storyteller and how he had helped them in their lives. Being in my 30s now, it still baffles me how friends of mine on Facebook continue to post obscure statements about cutting people out who are ungrateful or what have you. Always feels like needless drama that could have been avoided earlier on because adults, but whatever. Honestly, this has made me realize that I see more baffling and passive-aggressive posts from people my age and older than I do in the Zoomers coming up. Maybe the Zs are actually smarter than us about the dangers of social media after all. People who can't keep something to themselves and talk about another person's private matters. I'm very private about myself, as trust takes years to build up, but seconds to shatter. If they make up an answer for something instead of just saying, I don't know. I married my husband in part because I told him my car was making a funny noise and could he help, and he said, I can open the hood, I can look at it, I can say, yep, that looks like an engine, and after that, I'm lost. They told me not to tell anyone, but I'll never trust anyone like that. If they tell me people's secrets, they'll no doubt tell other people mine. If they don't use their blinkers, and we're talking about before you change lanes, turning them on mid-change is useless. I already see you in 2 lanes, you're not warning me of crap now. Any interviewer that brags about the family atmosphere at work or puts too much emphasis on the culture. We work really hard, but we're like family, so it's totally okay if we take advantage of you. I left a job after our manager put a snide post on Facebook saying how we're a big family and he's so chill and better than other stores of the same company in the area, so we shouldn't complain about things to management because we wouldn't want to work at the other stores, right? This is a day after I found out my bonus had been cut for several months. Mate, if I worked at the other stores, I'd have double the hours and a much larger bonus. Don't throw the family thing in my face. Passive aggression. For example, instead of telling me what the problem is, doing a bunch of petty crap seemingly to retaliate and expecting me to know why. Hey, I'm having some people over this weekend. I'm gonna have drinks and some food. You should come by. Weekend comes by. Thanks for coming, everyone. So today I'd like to talk about an amazing business opportunity. Hell nah to the nah. Oh, my boss did this to me and my wife once. Went over thinking it was going to be a regular boring dinner party, but his wife wanted us to donate a few thousand into her candle company. Turned to crap when they started arguing about their relationship and got the cops called over. Worst dinner I ever had. Someone who constantly interrupts. I don't trust physicians who never say, I don't know. The most dangerous physicians are the ones who make a bad call and then defend it with all of their might. Those who answer a question incorrectly with supreme confidence. If a doc occasionally says, I don't know, let's look it up, then I know I can trust her or him. If you make a snarky or rude comment to me disguised as something neutral or helpful, only something I've encountered with other women, honestly. It's something you pick up on if you pay attention, but it's usually really subtle. Here's an example to paint a picture. I recently was at a work event next to a chocolate fountain talking to one of my male co-workers. A friend for a couple of years, totally platonic, by the way. And while his back is turned to me for 1 minute, this woman, who I've never spoken to before but see around the office, walks up to me and says, "You have chocolate on your face." And I thought, oh crap, homegirl was looking out. And I asked her where, twice, and she ignored me despite me being right next to her. I was standing by the fountain but hadn't eaten any chocolate, so I pulled my coworker friend over and asked him if I had anything on my face. And he said no, checked a mirror too. She made it obvious the rest of the event that she was into him and wanted me to step aside so she could talk to him. It all felt like such a high school, let me assert my dominance to hide my insecurity bullcrap act. I don't trust people who don't have the self-confidence to command attention or respect without being catty or bringing other people down. When they state something that you know to be false as fact. And the real test is how they react when corrected. If they graciously can accept when they were misinformed in light of a polite correction or evidence to the contrary, then hooray for learning and personal growth. When they double down, then we've got a real problem. Repeatedly not following through, on small things too. Hey, I'll talk to you later this afternoon. Nothing. I've listened to this great song, I'll send it to you. Nothing. I just feel like those little moments are foreshadowing bigger things or disappointments to come. When their opinions on the same topics change depending on who they're with. And I should clarify that I mean this for when people actively have different opinions about the same subjects all in the same day or week. Not enough time to change their mind, and if they change it that often, then it still stands. You have no idea where someone stands if they're constantly changing their mind on things, and therefore I wouldn't trust them. And I don't mean for this to apply to people who are just passively agreeing or not arguing in order to keep the peace with family or in a work situation. I mean, that's just being polite. When they start talking about their essential oils or leggings or makeup or wine businesses. When they openly brag about screwing someone over. It's said so often I'm not worrying about giving it away, but mistreating service people, children, less intelligent people, or animals. When they tell you that all of their exes are crazy. Yeah, I get that one. We're all allowed to call one, maybe two exes in our lives crazy and be given a bit of the benefit of the doubt, even if it's generally a massive oversimplification. But if it's every single relationship, this speaks of either a complete lack of empathy or, much more likely, absolute denial. When I catch them lying about something very small with no consequences if they were to tell the truth. If someone happily tells you that they've cheated on someone before, one of the biggest red flags ever. If I can't sleep around them, must be an enemy. Another red flag is if you can't fast travel around them, and before you meet them, there's a vendor with health potions and a save point. Their phone background is a selfie. My lab partner in Bio's entire camera roll is just pictures of herself. No other people or landscapes, just her. I silently judge her so much for that. When they give non-apologies after doing something wrong, like, "I'm sorry to see you feel that way," instead of, "I'm sorry I did that," or "That's just the way I am," or "Why do you care so much?" or "It's not a big deal. I have to say it, but sometimes apologies aren't warranted, and if someone screws me over or does something that tees me off and expects an apology, they can jump in a wood chipper. When they don't turn down the music in the car so they can better see when parking. Clearly a psychopath. When your mistress sends a secret video of your bedroom encounter to your wife. Totally lost my trust at that point. When they're super nice to me, compliment the heck out of me, and want to be best friends right away. It immediately makes me suspicious and I put my guard up. I assume they have ulterior motives and are trying to establish a false rapport with me in order to throw me off their scent. If they're female and say that they don't have any female friends, usually because, quote, "women cause drama." This gives me caution because while you aren't going to get along with every woman, if you don't have any female friends at all, you might be the one causing the drama. But someone that actually became my good friend said this once, we became her first female friends. Yeah, if you don't have any female friends, I'm suspicious, but maybe you spend most of your time in male-dominated environments and haven't had a chance to meet a lot of other women in day-to-day life. If you don't have any female friends because women cause drama, screw right off. Trying to change your mind after you say no instead of being respectful and letting the matter drop. When they act like they've known me for years and yet only just met me, I feel like they're going to start selling me something or there's some other sort of angle a brewing. Someone who talks way too much about themselves and their life. If they have a curly mustache and top hat. If they frequently rub their hands together and laugh maniacally after tying a damsel to railroad tracks. And if the word dastardly is a part of their name. When they put a hand on your shoulder, squarely look you in the eye, smiling with a fat grin, and confidently say, "Trust me." Someone that wears a belt and suspenders. I don't trust someone that doesn't even trust their own pants. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Something about when a person tries too hard to be someone they're obviously not. I've realized some people can pick up on that and some cannot. When they have to keep saying, "Believe me," not tipping or being mean to customer service, sexist jokes or racist jokes preceded by, for example, "I'm not racist, but," before they say them. When they litter. I don't know why, but as soon as someone throws a wrapper out the window, I immediately lose all faith in that person. Like, you can hold it for an hour. If you can't hold on to a thing that long, how long will you hold on to what I tell you? When their small reasons for distrusting others are ridiculous. Anyone who'll tell you their IQ number. When they come on really strong seeking my friendship. In my experience, anyone who starts out with intense flattery, saying things like, "Let's be best friends," inevitably turns into a jealous, undermining butthole within months. Healthy people seek friendships with people they like. Unhealthy people pressure you into intense BFFdom, suck up your energy, then belittle and discard you. When they have the Christian Bale American Psycho dead eyes. They're smiling and cheerful, but there's just no light behind those eyes. Those people scare me. Yeah, although on principle I'm against shunning anyone based on their appearance, something about this does really resonate with me. There's a weird way that these people can respond coherently to you, while also seeming that they do not at all give a crap about what you're talking about. Look, if they talk crap about people they appear to be good friends with to you, then they do it about you as well. I'm just going to go ahead and say what everyone else already really knows. You feel that crap down in your gut, and that's all. False equivalencies. After Caitlyn Jenner won Woman of the Year, I had a friend insist some spurious they were going to force doggy effing on us next. What that has to do with transgenderism, I'll never know. When the details of their story change in any way, I automatically distrust everything they've said. I do that a lot, but that's not because I'm lying, but just because I don't have the best memory and I tend to forget or misplace a lot of details. Also, I'm not a good storyteller, so I'll probably mix things up, try to make the story as short as possible, or ramble about a small and unimportant thing in the story. As you can see, those are not the best of combinations. Anyone who feels comfortable enough to start unloading their personal drama shortly after meeting them. I found that's a pretty good foreshadowing for how that relationship will go. I feel instantly creeped out if someone uses my name too often when speaking to me. It's just weird and unnecessary. Once I found out they lie even about simple things. When they say that catapults are the superior siege engine. When their last name is a first name. When they think Christian equals good. He's a good Christian. I don't give a crap. Hitting their dog. The way they treat waitstaff and janitors and other service people. If they treat fellow human beings like trash because they're working a menial job, then they aren't to be trusted. When they emphasize how involved in a religion or church they are. Smoke and mirrors. When they keep saying, "We are friends." When people don't vaccinate their children. People who tell stories differently to different people. Doesn't make me hate you, but I know from that point on that you're pretty frickin' likely to be manipulative. Anyone that has to get very serious or overly intense about an opinion, but then immediately act like it's not a big deal if I say anything even slightly contrary to what they're saying. Being over the top crazy about any opinion seems nuts to me, but also shutting down any kind of adversity to it just seems like they're unaccepting of discussion or even questioning their own thoughts. A lot of people see this as very petty, but I honestly think that this is an instant red flag. Having thousands of Facebook friends, Instagram and Twitter followers, where they appear to be more attached about how people see them than how they see themselves. I automatically distrust people who seem to lie about something for no reason whatsoever. A terrible coworker of mine can't be trusted to ever tell the truth. If you ask if they did XYZ, they say yes, knowing full well that someone else did it or that it hasn't been done at all. I just prefer to stick with text traffic with them. People that have naughty words in their username. If within the first 30 minutes of meeting you, you reveal to go to Church X or bring up your religion in any way unprompted, then I automatically put my guard up. If they're trying to get me wasted, much more than they are, every time we meet up to party. Like, don't get me wrong, me and my close friends often do that to each other just for craps and giggles, because we know we can trust each other. But if you're a guy I just met 2 weeks ago and you want me to be crap-faced to the point where I can't remember a thing, I can't help but assume you're not looking for a friend in me. A good friend of mine was once traveling on a train. He was sitting on one of those seats where you sit opposite, facing towards someone. Anywho, he ended up with a very strange-looking guy in front of him. After maybe an hour of travel, the man leans forward to my friend and whispers, "Hey, you see that guy over there?" while nodding in the direction of a man wearing a white shirt. My friend is like, yeah? Don't trust that man. Never trust a person that buttons up all the buttons on a shirt. The strange man then leaned back and didn't speak a single word for the rest of the train ride. From that day, my friend has never trusted a person with all the buttons buttoned on a shirt. In short, never trust people who button all the buttons on a shirt. I want to know that man's reasoning. I will never forgive your friend for not discreetly following them from a safe distance and taking notes on their many baffling pieces of advice. When someone gets offended when they're told that someone doesn't want to interact with them and comes back with, "I just want to get to know you," it makes me distrust them because they clearly have no regard for other people's feelings and won't take no for an answer. I remember one instance where there was a group of 4 of us talking in a local cafe. We saw someone we knew outside walking and we waved. They did not see it as it was too far away, and one person, clearly meant in humor, said, "Are they ignoring us?" Then one person who's generally a misery to be around chirped up at the possibility of something negative and said completely seriously, "Yeah, they are." I only remember being taken aback that the thing that caused that person's mood to lighten was the prospect of discord between others. From then on, anyone who reacts positively, no matter how tiny, to something negative or bad blood between people who are not themselves, I distrust instantly. These people are toxic and not people you want in your daily life. I'm a nice person. If you were, you wouldn't need to bring it up. Someone getting something for me from the store and keeping the, for example, $1 change. I mean, sure, I'd say keep it when you tried giving it back to me anyway, but when you just assume that you can have it, I don't trust you anymore for some reason. Very slight passive-aggressive remarks that can easily be overlooked. The whole sassy witch trend is really getting on my nerves, since so many people confuse it with being straight-up mean or disrespectful to people, including their friends. Seriously, no one's attracted to negativity, and it sure as heck is not going to make me pour my heart out to you if you act like a butthole 90% of the time. Someone skipping a queue for something basic, we're talking bread or groceries. Also, people who are proud of not paying for something, like the train or bus, because they can get away with it. Lack of integrity shows in the small things. Talking over me. It doesn't happen much these days, but during my school days, I sucked at human interaction, so people would usually treat me like I didn't exist or matter in a group conversation. I've contemplated on multiple occasions the possibility of buying a mini whiteboard and marker to keep in my backpack at all times, and when someone starts interrupting me, I go silent and use that instead for the rest of the day for everyone. I did not like being treated like that as a kid. I ain't taking it anymore. In fact, I think I'll order the whiteboard this weekend. You know what? I just don't trust people that don't curse. Responsible firearm owner here. I don't trust people that are obsessed with weapons. If you have an unreasonably large collection, have to have one in every room of your house, carry at least 2 of them wherever you go, you're either obsessed with power, always starting crap, or you're very paranoid. Or just a combo of the 3. There are many folks I know that fit the profile of George Zimmerman, and I don't trust any of those guys that get such a raging obsession for killing tools. Seeing people manage their money improperly and blaming it on society or a third party. A MAGA hat. When they don't wash their hands after using the bathroom. If they don't like dogs or they show cruelty or anger in any way towards animals. A lot of people are rightfully scared of dogs from attacks and other bad experiences. Animals in general, sure, but if someone gets anxious around Rottweilers, it doesn't make them a butthole. If they treat housekeeping, custodians, janitors, maintenance, or garbage men like crap. People who never admit to fault. In my experience, this person will throw anyone under the bus if they have to. Jesus fish on vehicles, advertisements, or signs. Prepare to get screwed. When my dog or cat is unnaturally afraid or spooked by them. When they say they're honest right when you meet them. Fake moral outrage or moral outrage over extremely trivial stuff. When they start most of their sentences with, "Now, I'm not gonna lie." It's not necessarily their fault, but if your voice and your way of speaking sounds like that of a stereotypical D-bag, then it's going to take quite a bit to try to convince me that you're not in fact a D-bag. Medical professionals. What's the best reaction you've seen from a dad during the birth of his child? I've been told that my dad's response to my entering this world was, "It's a person." I was born in the 80s and the ultrasound technology wasn't that great. What my parents didn't know was that instead of one baby, there were two. Our hearts were beating at the same time and they could never really tell the gender, so they thought it was just one baby. So I came out. Then my mum says, "Doc, I still feel pain." And he looks and says, "I see another head." Apparently my father said, "What the frick? Whose baby is that?" And then my sister popped out. They were obviously floored. When I was born, my dad pulled out a Sharpie and drew a star at the bottom of my foot, to make sure they didn't lose me. Fun fact, if you do that to a premature baby, it can leave a permanent tattoo, because the skin isn't done yet. The more you know. So if I wrote "Made in China" on a preemie baby's foot. I was a C-section baby. A couple of years ago, the topic came up with my parents while drinking. I mentioned that this sounds kind of gross. My father looks me right in the eye and says, "Have you ever seen Alien? It was just like that." I've seriously threatened my wife with watching the Alien trilogy while she was pregnant. I almost passed out at the first C-section. We named our eldest daughter Ripley as her ultrasound photo made it look like she would emerge teeth and claws flailing. When I was born, my father, who's a gynecologist himself, came from watching me do my big entrance, or exit depending on how you look at it, and said to my mum, "You're not gonna believe what you just did." I was over 10 pounds at birth. For some reason, when they mentioned that their father was a gynecologist, I imagined him holding up a judge's number rating once the baby came on out of there. I don't know why, other than that his job would make him maybe a little more detached from the emotion of it all. Some more comments to follow. My uncle was 13 pounds when he was born in the late 1930s. My grandmother was 5'1" tall and he was her first child. That woman had a uterus and a hoo-ha of steel. No other explanation. Apparently she couldn't feel her legs properly for about 3 months afterwards. I was 11 pounds even. My mom came so close to breaking my dad's arm, they gave her a rolled-up blanket to squeeze instead. Luckily, I was a pretty quick birth, 5 hours, I believe. My dad went to the hospital to visit me and my mom at the time. After hearing a baby's screams so loud you could hear it in the elevator, he turns to the nurse with a silly grin on his face and tells her, "Well, this one has quite the vocal cords. I'm feeling sorry for his parents already." She turns to him and tells him, trying not to laugh, "You're telling me, it's yours." My dad missed my birth because he was choking on a sandwich. Like he was super excited and choked, or just an unfortunate coincidence? My dad missed my birth because he was buying a lottery ticket one state over. My parents weren't married and I was unplanned, and if my mum is telling the truth, he didn't want me at first and had wanted her to get a termination. It was only until after he held me for the first time that he realized he wanted me. And he's been a very good dad, thankfully. A story comes to mind of a friend who, when his son was born, just started crying hysterically and hugged everyone. The doctor, nurses, he even ran out into the hallway and hugged people visiting other patients. Always makes me smile when I think of it. My friend told me his story. He was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck. So, he was a little purple when he was born. His mum couldn't see what he looked like. His dad told her, "He looks like a California raisin." Ha! I actually had the reverse problem. I was hyperoxygenated and was red. My dad actually said, "Put this one back. She's not done yet." My husband coddled our first son because I wanted him to have something with his son I could never have. I saw him holding this red, wrinkly, swaddled little baby and said, "Oh, look, they dressed up a potato like Mother Teresa." My dad is a carpenter and was at work when he was told that my mum was in labor with me. His reaction? He went into a shocked stupor and accidentally shot his thumb with a nail gun. And that's the story of why my then 11-year-old sister had to fill out my birth certificate. Did she get to name you too? Be honest, is your name Poohface on your birth certificate? My friend got to name his little brother, named him Leonardo after a ninja turtle. My birth was both a terrifying and wonderful day at the same time. My mother hemorrhaged pretty badly, so my dad had this turbulent hour in which he was both crying with joy over the birth of his first child and also with terror at the thought of losing his wife. The doctors wouldn't let him back in the room while they were trying to save my mum's life. So apparently for this hour, all he did was pace the hallways outside the room holding me, and refusing to let anyone else near me, as if he was already preparing for it to just be me and him. My dad has never stopped being an utterly devoted and emotional father. To all those who asked, yes, my mother survived. At a forceps delivery last night, the dad-to-be was so horrified and impressed by the amount of pain his wife had gone through during her labor that he phoned up his own mum to say, "Thanks. I'm afraid to ask. Forceps delivery? Baby won't come out easily from the birth canal, so the doctor grabs its head with forceps and helps out. Usually leaves little dents because the baby's head is soft, but those straighten out afterwards. Note, usually straighten out afterwards. Multiple Redditors still retain scars and elongated heads. Thanks for the nightmares, guys. I think I finally decided to never give birth." When I was born after 13 hours of labor, my dad looked at my full head of black hair and blue eyes, looked at my mum and said, "Are you sure she's mine?" My grandfather was the one the nurses let carry me back to my room post-cleanup, and when my mum asked if I was okay, he said, "Yeah, I don't think the extra 2 toes will be a big hindrance," which led to my mum frantically tearing the blankets off to check my toes. Basically, the men in my family are buttholes. My brother was born about a year after me, and my mother had gone into false labor so many times that she only knew she was really in labor when she couldn't sleep that night. Anyways, later at the hospital, the doctor said that she was going to be in labor for a lot longer, so he went and ate dinner. She wasn't in labor for much longer. My grandmother delivered the kid and was holding him when a nurse walks by and says, "You can't do that." My grandmother retorts with, "Well, I'm not going to put it back." That doesn't sound like a very good nurse to me. No, that doesn't sound like a very good nurse. What did she think the grandmother was going to do? I imagine there was a fair bit of shock involved with realizing that a patient's family had delivered the baby instead of the hospital, but still. My father, up until I was born, had not seen a newborn baby, like ever. Naturally, he assumed that all babies look like they do in movies or commercials. As you can imagine, he was quite disappointed when an alien-looking thing is handed to him and introduced to him as his daughter. He handed me back to the doctors and went outside for a smoke to calculate how much all of the plastic surgeries were going to cost. Newborn babies are kind of gross looking, sticky and covered in baby cheese. Baby cheese? Well, now I'm not finishing the rest of my sub, thanks. My own husband, during my first C-section, the doctor asks if he wants to look over the curtain at the baby being delivered. He looks over, looks back with a look of horror. "What's wrong?" "Your insides are on your outsides." I will never forget the look on his face or the sound of his voice. "They're ripping you apart," is what my husband said in that exact situation. "They're tearing you apart, Lisa." When my mum gave birth via C-section to my brothers and I, triplets, the doctor asked my dad if he was okay watching the operation. My dad's response, "Oh yeah, it just looks like you're gutting a deer." My mum watched the second C-section, my husband had watched the first, and it fully satisfied his curiosity about where babies come from. She told me later that they hauled everything out, cut out the baby, then according to her, they stuffed you like a turkey to put everything back in. When I was born, they took me off immediately to clean me, take my footprints, bundled me up, and whatnot. I guess the 2 nurses were in a bit of a hurry and were doing both at the same time, and I managed to get a print of my left foot twice instead of a left and a right. Apparently, upon seeing the prints, my father became extremely distressed and literally ripped the blanket off me to make sure I didn't actually have 2 left feet. When my older sister was being born, my dad was in the room. He was so excited to watch that he screamed, "Honey, you gotta see this!" My mum said deadpan, "I'm a bit busy, can I get back to you, dear?" Kind of on topic, my mum said that when she woke up my dad to tell him her water broke, he jumped out of bed and started sweeping. She asked what the frick he was doing and he said, "I have to clean, the baby is coming." Just imagine what he's gonna think of these floors. "Get out the fine china." According to my parents, I was a super fast delivery. Like so fast that the doctors and nurses had stepped out of the room to go to attend to someone else, and my mum grabbed my dad and told him to get ready to catch me. My dad didn't even have time to put on gloves and had to catch me, baby gunk and all. Apparently he smiled, passed me to the nurses, who came rushing in, kissed my mum on the lips, then leaned over and vommed everywhere. In conclusion, baby gunk and spew. Medical professional here. We were trying to get Mum to push for at least 10 seconds with each attempt at getting baby out. So I'm counting down from 10 and ask the dad to join in just as baby's head appears. 10, 9, 7, 4, 7, 3. The guy was so excited and nervous and caught in the moment that he forgot how to count. One of the most precious moments I've gotten to be a part of. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My mum wanted to deliver me naturally, but there were complications. My head was way too big. My mum was still trying to push when the doctor realized he would have to perform an emergency C-section. Apparently they put the bars up on the side of my mum's bed, rushed her out of the room at full speed and turned the lights off, leaving my dad stranded alone in a hospital room by himself. He said he didn't know what to do, so he just sat down, still in the dark, and waited for someone to get him. A little over an hour later, a nurse came in to prepare the room, found my dad and brought him down to the nursery to see me. I laughed so hard just thinking about my father sitting alone, in the dark, in a random room in a hospital while I was being born. My father's son is a very well-educated, well-spoken man. He was with me in the hospital room when I gave birth, and the first thing he said after seeing our son the first time was, "Oh my God, look at his balls! They are huge on a newborn. Now I'm curious, but I don't want to search for baby balls." "Oh, here you go, attached pictures and hyperlink, for educational purposes. Wait, NSA, Prism, frick! Well, you took one for the team there, pal." My mum went into labor late in the evening. My dad was asleep, he had to work early. She went in and said, "The baby is coming, get up." He replied, "Calm down, it's fine, go have a cold bath." So she had my grandma take her to the hospital. In my dad's defense, if he sleeps as heavily as me, he probably wasn't even awake for this. My biological father was out drinking while I was born. My mum's best friend and the man I consider my father was there the whole time and used to tell me all the time how I could fit in one of his hands. Each time he told me, he looked teary-eyed. I'm curious as to whether this was a small or premature baby or whether the fine father figure in question was in fact an enormous giant. Or whether he was rocking gloves like Uncle Jack from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I was born on Father's Day, haha, funny story. My dad got tennis rackets and tennis balls as a Father's Day gift, so he was playing with them in the basement, hitting balls against the wall when my mum went into labor. So she yelled at him from the top of the stairs that the baby was coming, and my dad, he says, "Okay dear, I'll be down here playing tennis." She was livid. I was born in the 80s and my dad was in the operating room. I have a few older brothers who are all born naturally, but bro number 3 did some damage on the way out, so I was born via scheduled C-section, something my parents weren't really used to. My parents didn't know the gender of their new baby, me, ahead of time, so it was going to be a surprise. The surgeon put his hand in my mum's abdomen to reach for me and yelled to the room, "It's a girl," before getting me out. My dad was so excited he just blurted out, "How can you tell?" And the surgeon looked at him with a sarcastic face and said, "She's wearing earrings." When my dad was born, my grandpa wasn't even there. He was asleep in the lobby of the hospital. The doctor had to go and find him to tell him he was a father. When he came into the delivery room and the doctor showed him my dad, he only had one thing to say. "I thought they were supposed to be cute." My dad always said I looked like an undercooked lizard. It was a Sunday and my mum was in labor with me. The doctor comes in and asks, "How's it going?" Mum, "Oh, I'm feeling…" "Oh no, the football game. The Bears are playing and how's it going?" My dad, "Up by 7. I was delivered by C-section, but apparently my mum's contractions were so intense that while she was holding my dad's hand, she squeezed so tight that she broke it. Mind you, my dad is 6'4" with huge hands and my mum is only about 5'5". The day I was born, my dad took me down every hall in the hospital and showed me off to everyone who would look. "Look how beautiful my little girl is." My mum said he was gone with me for over an hour. "That is just the sweetest thing," put a big grin on my face. "Look at this beautiful thing that I made." "All by myself." Well, me and my wife, we get to keep it. I was in the OR assisting with a C-section. Dad was there and he passed out and crapped himself. I thought that was pretty fantastic. My dad likes to tell the story of my birth over and over. They knew I would be born early. At 6 months, the doctors realized they couldn't keep me in any longer. They warned my dad that I wouldn't cry because I was so premature. Not only did I come out mad as hell, but I screamed my little head off too. They told my dad that at 2 pounds I only had a 5% chance of survival. 1973, mind you. I proved them wrong on all counts. My dad broke his back a few days before my mum went into labor with my brother. He was still in the hospital recovering from surgery, not able to walk around yet. My mum went into labor in the same hospital, and my dad demanded for a large enough room for 2 beds and that they wheel his butt down to her room so he could be with her. So my dad was laying in a hospital bed with a broken back right next to my mum when she had my brother. Thankfully not the one that I personally saw, but when my younger cousin was born, they had someone who was still training in the room observing and whatnot. Well, after the birth, she was in charge of taking care of the placenta. It dropped out of her hands and splattered all over the floor. My uncle was so disgusted by it that he fainted. For the birth of my oldest brother, my dad was holding my mum's hand. After he was born, my mum noticed he was still rubbing his hand. She asked him why he was rubbing it, and my dad said, "Well, he was squeezing my hand pretty hard." My mum asks, "Why didn't you tell me I was hurting you?" Dad says, "Well, I figured you were probably in more pain than I was." They've been married for 31 years and they both endured 4 more childbirths. Oh, my dad started freaking out so much when I was born that he stole my mum's oxygen mask for himself. The doctor started yelling at him about how the baby, me, needed the oxygen and had to steal it away from him. An older resident once told me the story about how he was working in New York City in his youth. There was a blizzard and a guy couldn't get his wife to the hospital in time. She gave birth at home and they brought them in to check up on the baby and mother. The dude is obviously in shock from the delivery and keeps saying, "I told him," the baby, "to stay in there. I told him to stay. Not an hour old and he's already stopped listening to me." Cracks me up every time he tells it. I'm just getting a hilarious mental image of this guy screaming, "Stop! Stop!" at his wife's hoo-ha. When I was younger and mad at my parents, I told them that I hoped I was switched at birth because there was no way I could be related to them. My mum said that wasn't possible because my dad literally never let go of me when I was in the hospital. He stayed with me the whole time because he was afraid someone would try to switch their crappy baby with his awesome baby. When my brother was born, his head was like a lemon being shoved out of a birth canal. My dad looked at him, then asked the doctor if his head was going to stay like that. He also wrote my name wrong on the birth certificate. I love my dad. When my sister was born in the 80s, my dad was ill-prepared for what newborns sometimes look like when they come out. Newborn skulls are kind of squishy, so when my sister got squeezed out, her head got a little squished and came out kind of conehead-like. In the delivery room, my dad smiled and said she was beautiful. Then he immediately exited, started crying, and called his friend Mike, a doctor, and said, "I don't know, man, there's something wrong with her. She came out looking like a frickin' hammerhead shark." His buddy had to convince him nothing was wrong and the head would go back to normal. Apparently he kept saying, "But she looks like a frickin' hammerhead," over and over again. Dad here. My second child was born with bright, shiny red hair. Neither me nor her mum have red hair. There were about 10 or 15 assorted doctors, interns, nurses, etc. in the room. One of the interns sees the hair and immediately asks, "So, does red hair run in your family?" Every medical professional in the room sucks in a breath. They knew the dangers of asking such a question, probably from previous births. I looked the intern in the eye and said, "Yes, hers and mine." Everyone breathed a collective sigh of relief and immediately went back to what they were doing. Had I been quicker on my feet, I would have said something to the effect of, "No, wait, frick, I knew it!" and stormed out while everyone glared evilly at the intern. It would have taught him a lesson. My mum loves to tell the story about my older brother, parents' firstborn kid, being born. They got to the hospital around 2 a.m. and after the initial examination, the doctor said it was going to be a while still and disappeared. An hour or so later, the nurse says it's getting to be time, so she goes to find the doctor and she can't. He's not answering pages or anything. There was a trash can at the foot of the bed, and my dad started freaking out, yelling about his first kid is going to be born straight into a trash can and what a horrible start to life that is. Another nurse calmed him down just in time for the doctor to show up yawning. He'd fallen asleep somewhere and nothing was waking him up. I worked in the local EMS system for about 6 years. In that time, I've become acquainted with a lot of the floor staff. Before my son was born, we arrived at the L&D unit and I was greeted by the staff warmly and excitedly. They made sure that both my then wife and I were treated with the best of care. Fast forward to 40 hours later. She had been in labor for 36 of them. I have not slept at all in that time frame, nor have I eaten. I was too nervous to leave her side, worried that I would miss the birth of my first child. The moment arrives, she's crowning. I'm there holding her hand and being comforting as I can when it hits me like a sack of bricks. Holy crap, you're about to have a kid. You, the irresponsible paramedic. You're about to be responsible for another human being. That played on repeat in my head. As my gorgeous son is delivered, the combination of exhaustion, stress, and hunger took me out. I remember the nurses say, "Wow, he looks really pale. Oh crap!" Then a whiteout and a thud. I waked up to the ED staff and some of my fellow EMS crews and L&D staff standing over me. To this day, I have not yet lived down that I, a 6'1", 300-pound ex-rugby player paramedic, was knocked out by a newborn who was 21 inches long, weighing 7 pounds 11 ounces. I love that story. What's the craziest advice someone has given you about your pregnancy? I was about 8 months pregnant. I said something at a family dinner one Sunday about how I was scared of labor. My gram shouts out, "You know, you should smoke a blunt." Now, my family's open about their green herb use. Most of my family will smoke from time to time, but my grandmother has never smoked in her life, so I was a bit confused. I just looked at her, and she keeps on going, "If you smoke blunts well into your labor, it will keep you calm and help the pain. I'll find you some green herb. Just smoke it in the bathroom of the hospital. But wear socks. You have ugly feet, and the doctor won't help you if he sees your cracked heels." My Grammy sure is something. I didn't take her advice, and the doctor delivered my baby even with my cracked heels. And once I had the baby and could reach my feet again, I made sure they weren't cracked anymore. Got severe itching all over my body during the 7th month. Did the routine test for liver function, all normal. Colleague advises, rub your husband's underwear which he has left for wash or laundry all over your body as a remedy for itching. No, I did not follow that advice. Oh, I was told that I need to shave down there or the baby will get carpet burn. Like, what? I feel like shaving down there would be the thing that gave the baby stubble burn. When I was pregnant past my due date, a co-worker advised me to drink cod liver oil mixed with vodka. Apparently this mixture would upset my digestive system, give me horrible diarrhea, and thus trigger labor contractions. To clarify, I did not drink this combo to help with being overdue. I ended up several days later being medically induced, and the labor delivery was swift and baby healthy. He's a grown man now. That I should drink her crappy MLM aloe vera juice every day. It's not advisable for pregnant women. I knew when I started this story collection that it would be full to bursting with homeopathic crap, and I think we've done quite well to have this be our first story about it, to be honest. My labor should be painless because Jesus died and erased the pain during childbirth, penalty humans got from Eve. If I feel pain, it's because I don't believe in Jesus' redemptive powers. That's not how that works. That's not how any of that works. Was told not to drink hot tea because then I would boil my baby. The reasoning for this advice was that the umbilical cord acted as a sort of snorkel from the baby to the mother's navel. If the navel was submerged, the baby wouldn't be able to get air. I had a coworker tell me that eating peanut butter, I was eating an apple with peanut butter on my lunch break, would give my baby cancer. I already thought she was the world's greatest idiot, so that nugget of wisdom was just confirmation. Don't raise your arms above your head. It will tangle the baby's cord and the baby will die. I came here having been given this advice as well. Even worse, the kid was born with the cord around his neck and needed to be delivered by C-section for other reasons. I could tell she wanted to say I told you so. Both mine had their cords wrapped and I had 2 C-sections, but cords wrapped aren't really that unusual. But I'm sure she would have loved to I told you so me. She's also the woman that told me she blames her 1970s potty training techniques for her daughter's bipolar. She feels like common practice was abusive and led to all of her daughter's mental health issues. Not to sit on stairs because it will cause you to have a miscarriage. People are crazy. According to my mother, everything can cause a miscarriage. Stairs, the silent killer. Coffee? Miscarriage. Tea? Miscarriage. Too much meat? Miscarriage. Not enough meat? Miscarriage. Sewing? Miscarriage. Paddling the school canoe? Oh, you'd better believe that's a miscarriage. Had 2 miscarriages before finally having my daughter. Just bad luck chromosomal abnormalities. But she made sure to remind me not to do all those things again next time. You know, just in case. Thanks for the subtle blame, Mom. Not me, but my sister. She had to have an emergency C-section when she had my niece. Her mother-in-law said she wouldn't be a real woman unless she had a natural birth. I was 18 when I had my son and was already terrified. Had to be induced and ended up having to have a C-section because labor just wasn't progressing and his heart rate kept dropping. For the first year and a half of my son's life, my mother told me I wasn't a real mom because I had to have a C-section. My mother-in-law said it's okay to drink mixed drinks. She went on to say that my husband was a margarita baby. I now call him that when he gets on my nerves. That is hilarious. It's like, okay, margarita baby, whatever you say. My mother-in-law: don't eat spicy foods or stand under the moon. Ugh. It's the full moon, not just the moon in general. This was a decade ago and my memory sucks. The spicy thing comes from the superstition that spicy foods will give your kid a birthmark. On my very first OB visit, first baby, they handed me a book about month-by-month pregnancy and said that if I had any questions, to just refer to the book. Then I said, well, what if the baby… She cut me off right there and pointed to the book and said, it's in the book. I changed OBs. For those who are asking, my question was not in the book. I had questions about the baby being premature. My brother and I were born very premature and I was going to ask her about it. And my baby ended up being born 3.5 months early, and I had a lot of complications prior to that. Being high risk is not fun. But he's healthy now. Wow, that is complete crap. Imagine if every doctor did that. What an idiot. Walks into doctor's office. Hey doc, I've been feeling nauseous and have had severe stomach pains for some time. Did you check WebMD? What? Did you check WebMD? Nah, I figure… I can't help people who won't help themselves. Well, seems that in some rare cases, the medical experts can be just as infuriating as the people around us, I guess. But still, folks, 99 times out of 100, listen to the people who've trained in this rather than your crazy homeopathic hippie uncle. Don't worry about the swelling and high blood pressure, that's normal, says my midwife days before being induced due to preeclampsia. Literally a life-threatening condition in some cases. A+ midwifery. Oh, I've got this. The lady at the counter in the village bakery told me that I should smear my face with my man's splooge to counter pregnancy acne. It was the first time I'd ever met her. In high school, I read an article that said, in complete seriousness, women should give their men BJs every morning because morning sickness is caused by the body not being used to splooge. Younger me earnestly asked our medical teacher that question. Her tiny Christian body just froze. Looking back, it was a horrible idea and I can't believe I asked that. My entire family was super judgmental against breastfeeding for some reason. It was really strange. How long are you going to do that for? You're taking the joy of feeding the baby away from everyone, said my mother when I was breastfeeding. She came around though and ended up getting judgy about women who choose to formula feed. I'm not judgy, by the way. My mother-in-law said the same thing. She said I was preventing her son, my husband, from being a dad because I breastfed. Apparently the zillion other things he did as a parent besides feed her didn't make him a dad. What a nut. I'm in my 30s. When we had our kids, my mum kept telling me how when I was a baby, I was fed exclusively on formula because she was told by her doctors it was the best. She kept saying it, almost, but not quite, judging us for breastfeeding our own children. I honestly hear that from a lot of people our age. I'm just shy of 33. I wonder if there was a formula marketing shift in that time period. It's actually a real problem. 2 generations of women were convinced through false advertising that formula was safer and healthier. This led to a loss of cultural knowledge on breastfeeding. My in-laws were fully supportive of my breastfeeding until my baby reached 6 months old. Then it went from, "You're doing the best thing for him," to, "When are you weaning?" It doesn't expire, jeez. Ooh, I get to vent. My 4-month-old has a cold and last week he was really fussy and wouldn't take a bottle at daycare. Until then, he'd been going back and forth between breast and bottle just fine. The daycare provider asked if I was still breastfeeding and if so, could I stop so he'd take a bottle better? No. He's back to normal now. I didn't fight to breastfeed through mastitis and a gigantic mother-fricking abscess just to quit at her convenience. Bottles are fine, but we like breastfeeding too. My grandmother made a comment about my weight gain with my first pregnancy around month 5. For reference, I started severely underweight at 87 pounds and was closely monitored by my doctor because of it. At this point, I was nearing 125. When I told her that the obstetrician-gynecologist was happy with where I was, she told me of her own doctor's advice in 1956. Smoke a packet of cigarettes per day to keep your weight down. The baby can gain its own weight after birth. Thanks but no thanks, Grandma. One person told me I would never be able to fit a baby out of my body because I wasn't big enough down there, and to just get a C-section. Not a doctor. A random person who had literally never seen down there. No, I'm not going to get major surgery just because you don't think I'm large enough. I've had 2 successful natural births. My mom's a petite woman, and she naturally gave birth to my brother, who was really close to 10 pounds. They became quite the attraction in the hospital, as people saw the monster baby, checked the room number, then saw my mom and wondered how the heck he got out of her. Pretty sure my mother-in-law had the same thing happen. My husband was a 10-pound baby with the widest shoulders on record at his hospital. That butthole neglected to tell me this until we were married. I have the sudden urge to shake my snoring boyfriend awake and demand every single one of his birth stats, shoulder width included. Are you me? This is literally the story of me. My mom barely comes up to my shoulder. I was 10 pounds 6 ounces, and nurses stopped by for like 36 hours to see the tiny woman who gave birth to the Thanksgiving turkey. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. While pregnant with me, my mum was told that drinking beer would help her baby develop and be nice and chubby. I was 5 weeks early and barely 6 pounds. It could have been substantially worse. Apart from being a really small baby, I didn't have any fetal alcohol-related health conditions. Conversely, when my grandma was pregnant with my mum, her first, in the 50s, the accepted wisdom was that smoking while pregnant was a good idea for first-time mothers, because it lowered their birth rate, which was supposed to make labor and delivery easier. But low birth weight is extremely dangerous and makes the process harder. My mum was born 2 months early and weighed about 2 or 3 pounds. She was so tiny that my grandma dressed her in baby doll clothing, and my mum spent her first month of life in the hospital's NICU. That's insane. I wonder what medical knowledge that's commonly accepted today will turn out in the future to have been disastrously wrong. That if you try really hard and stretch a lot, you too can have a natural birth. Not actually a bad plan, as long as you don't wind up not fricking dilating after 30 hours and have an emergency C-section due to fetal distress. Because I just didn't try hard and stretch enough. Taking a bath can cause a miscarriage. To be fair, it was from my husband's incredibly sweet grandmother, who meant well. She was 92 years old at the time and hadn't been pregnant in a very, very long time. She also had a good number of miscarriages. My father-in-law and his sister are 15 years apart in age, so I think she was coming from a different place than most. One of my work colleagues was obsessed with recommending that I eat citrus fruits, especially the easy-to-peel cutie tangerines. She was convinced that it would give the baby a higher IQ in the long run. So not really about pregnancy advice, but someone told me to put baking soda in a cup and pee on it first thing in the morning. If it fizzed, I was pregnant with a boy. If it did not fizz, I was having a girl. If it didn't involve literal baking soda, this sounds like some of the kind of medieval tests people would conduct on themselves way back when. Like peeing on a potted seedling and its growth determining whether you're fertile or not. Silly idiots. When I found out I was pregnant a 4th time, 3 losses in a row, I heard so many from strangers. Mine isn't necessarily advice, but more open mouth insert foot. Are you sure this one's gonna work? I was also told that if I was on my cell phone or around my modem or router, it would cause brain damage to my unborn child. She's 4, perfectly healthy, no brain damage, and let's just say it took a lot of medical attention to get her to full term. What caused my miscarriages? They said my hormones couldn't sustain a pregnancy, and after the 3rd, I was told that with my hormone levels, getting pregnant again wouldn't happen. She was a surprise and the best one ever. It took an educated doctor that wanted the best outcome. Previous doctors just looked at my history and was like, sorry for your loss, maybe next time will go better. The best day of my husband and mine's life was finding out that she was alive, thriving, and having an amazing doctor who moved heaven and earth to make sure she'd make it. He was at work when I found out, and he actually yelled and his entire office heard him. He almost ran out of the office, he was more excited than me. Sitting with my legs crossed will cause a miscarriage. Don't take a bath, it'll cause a miscarriage. Lifting more than 5 pounds will cause a miscarriage. Wearing tight-fitted clothes? You guessed it, miscarriage. Spicy food could cause a miscarriage. I worked retail. A stranger informed me that morning sickness and smell sensitivity isn't real while I was heading to the bathroom to throw up. Also had a customer tell me that the baby isn't actually affecting my bladder. Had a third customer tell me not to drink tap water. Can't remember why, probably causes miscarriages. My cousin tried to tell me that I had morning sickness because it's God's way of telling a woman she isn't ready for a baby. Had an anterior placenta, so we couldn't feel kicks until close to 30 weeks. My mum said there was no such thing and the reason we couldn't feel kicks is because I was fat. In conclusion, literally everything causes miscarriages and morning sickness is a lie. When I found out I was pregnant, a nurse friend of mine felt the need to rattle off an endless list of crap that could potentially be wrong with my baby. Another friend of mine, when I started telling people that I was pregnant after the 3 months and was accused of telling people too early, said, "It doesn't matter when you tell people, you could have a miscarriage at any point during your pregnancy." They both meant well, but really guys, just shut up. My grandma constantly told me not to argue with my husband because it would cause the baby to be fussy and difficult. Frozen cabbage leaves in the bra to help with swelling and pain due to breastfeeding. While it did feel awesome for the whole minute or so that they stayed frozen, they eventually turned to mush and made a mess. Advice I wish someone had given me: get a mattress protector, not just for when your water breaks. Carrying a big baby next to your bladder means the act of rolling over in a bed can cause leakage. And if you're too tired after the birth to take the baby to a changing table or the floor, you're going to want a layer of protection on your mattress. Soon as that diaper is off, the baby will projectile poop. Sheets and walls can be washed, but mattresses can't. Poop explosions are real. Prepare yourselves. Now I want to add a really good mattress cover or pad to my registry. And make sure you register for 2. When the baby pees all over the bed at 1 a.m. or your milk leaks everywhere in the middle of your night, you need a backup mattress protector for when the first one is getting washed. My mum was talking to my paternal grandma while pregnant with me, then winced because I was kicking her ribs. My grandma told her to swat it so it'll know. She wanted my mum to spank fetus me through her own belly for kicking her. After my mum told us that story, swat it so it'll know became a common response anytime someone was complaining about something. Well, I'm the husband and father, but a doctor told my 38 or 39-week pregnant wife that her condition was no excuse to not keep me satisfied in the bedroom. Not even sure why it was brought up. She was just getting a regular checkup. I wasn't even there. The doc busts out with this. Not her regular doctor. Her regular doctor was also off pregnant. She was not impressed, to say the least. So there's the advice. Being pregnant is no reason to not please your significant other. Did you pass along that helpful advice to her regular doctor? I'm sure she would have been delighted to hear that a colleague was dispensing pearls of wisdom like that. She did, actually, along with a letter to the head of medicine due to another incident. This was a new doctor and actually still on probation now. With my first baby, I had a random lady in a grocery store tell me to take a bath in bleach because it's good for the skin and for the baby's growth and development. I was mortified. I was told that heartburn during pregnancy meant that the child had a lot of head hair, had a crap load of heartburn, and kid had barely any hair. "Oh, don't go swimming or the baby will drown," 25-year-old co-worker. All I could picture is the little nugget with a straw out of my hoo-ha to breathe. My friend's dad was a chiropractor. She told him that I'd had miscarriages. He told me, "No wonder, you'll lose every pregnancy with a pelvis like that." Freaked me out so much, and I guess I ruined the party by crying and leaving, and my friend was mad at me. I have back trouble, yes, but I have 3 children living. My adorable father-in-law told me I had to deliver naturally. If I had C-section, I wouldn't love my baby as much because I didn't suffer for him. First of all, the kid was comfortably sitting and was not turning around, you utter butthole. I was not about to risk my kid's life in a feet-first delivery, no sir. Second, a C-section is a major surgery and a pain in the butt, believe me. I did suffer. You try being cut open like that while awake and then deal with a feisty, colicky newborn while recovering from it. Third, really? I need to feel pain in order to love my child? I can't even. Fourth, you don't even have a uterus, old man. Zip it. Ah, that felt good. Not allowed to sew either using sewing machine or by hand. It will cause the umbilical cord to tangle. Just because you almost died carrying that one, don't let it stop you from having another one because all pregnancies are different. Okay then, I could potentially have 2 motherless children. Sounds like something a responsible adult should do. I had extremely high blood pressure and the placenta dropped so low the doctor said just bending over would cause a problem. They couldn't see the bottom on ultrasound and had to use the wand. I had such bad morning sickness, and then when that was done, I had acid reflux so bad I was throwing up 3 to 10 times a day. I didn't gain any weight my whole pregnancy and couldn't eat. Doctor said just the elevation in blood pressure alone was reason enough to never do it again. Currently pregnant and currently dealing with my mother who became an anti-vaxxer 13 years ago. Just found out recently when I mentioned I got my Tdap and flu shot, and I asked if everyone in the family was caught up because the baby is due next month and the flu season is right around the corner. She called me a freaking idiot for putting rotting DNA in my body while pregnant. She refuses to get a flu shot, so I refuse to let her see her first grandchild. Not taking chances with my kid's life because you can't be bothered to do legitimate research or listen to me when I try and explain it to you. Identical twins. What's the craziest way which you've abused your powers of mistaken identity? I had a friend who had an identical twin, and they both spent the first month of university, they went to the same school, convincing everybody that there was actually 3 of them and that they were triplets. By the time they decided to come clean, nobody would believe that there wasn't a third of them around somewhere. You can't trick me, I've hung out with Lucas countless times, etc. My dad is an identical twin. When he was dating my mum in college, he used to play a game with his twin. He'd call my mum and partway through the conversation, hand the phone off to my uncle. My uncle would see how long he could carry the conversation before he had to tap out and hand the phone off to my dad. Anyways, the first time my mum ever said, "I love you," to my dad, she was actually talking to my uncle. My uncle faltered, and that was when my mum realized what had been happening. They must have straightened everything out because they ended up married and had me. But seriously, what a colossal strategic error on my dad's part. My brother and I had a sequence of 10 numbers memorized, so if anyone ever asked if we were telepathic, we could prove that we were. This was like 3rd grade. I know 2 sets of twins that have created their own language. One of them taught them to their kids who are now step-siblings. I walked in one day and they were speaking what sounded like an alien language. They stopped for a second and stared at me because it had been a secret. My stepbrother ended up telling me, but I was amazed because it was a full conversation like it was completely normal. I just couldn't understand a word. My twin brother got me a detention for his dress code violation and neglected to tell me, which resulted in me almost getting suspended. In return, I failed his French test. My twin and I tried switching places for a day in grade school. It lasted all of 5 minutes because even though our teachers didn't catch on, her classmates knew and kept asking what I was doing in their class and where my sister was. My sister and I did the exact same thing. In 1st grade, the teacher had the class split up into different groups with my sister and I in different groups. After a little while, our teacher moved the groups so that I was moved from the craft table to the reading section, and my sister the opposite. I forget what happened, but our teacher had to leave the room for some reason, and I was able to convince my sister to switch places with me because I was a small child and wanted to do anything but read. When she came back into the room, she immediately noticed something was off and went to go get our mother, who was right across the hall with her kindergarten class. She immediately pointed out who was who, and we were sent off to the principal's office. This is the only story I have about us switching places because my sister respects authority and never wants to use being an identical twin to our advantage. That feels like a whole bunch of potential gone to waste. What's the point in having a superpower like an identical twin if you can't use it to mess with people? Here's a following couple of answers from people who weren't twins, but didn't let that stop them from abusing that power. I've run into people, not close friends, just acquaintances, I haven't wanted to talk to and have pretended to be my identical twin to avoid annoying small talk. "Oh, I'm sorry, you must think I'm my name. We're twins, this happens a lot." I'm not a twin, but had my whole class of 4th graders convinced that I was, and that my twin was also a teacher, and we would switch places and teach the other's class occasionally. It was hilarious hearing kids' theories on how to decide when I was me and when I was my twin. I went to kindergarten all the way through to the 12th grade with fraternal brother-sister twins. During the last who gives a frick anymore weeks of senior year, they switched places for a day and just refused to admit that they weren't each other. While in Iraq, I signed all of my legal rights over to my brother. That gave him legal rights to my bank account. When my family was in financial trouble, I gave the okay for my brother to take money out of my account. The bank refused to honor the legal documents and would not let my brother take money out. Next day, he went to the same bank with my passport and took the money out of my account anyway. My brother went to a job interview pretending to be me. He, got the job and I've been working there for just over a year now. My father's father had an identical twin and they were both in the Air Force. First trick was that my grandfather was blind in one eye due to a childhood accident while running with scissors. His brother went and took his physicals for him, but they caught them just before pilot training. Fast forward, they're both active duty during World War II, and one is stationed in California while the other is stationed somewhere at a US base in the Pacific. My grandfather, Earl, was the guy who would put pilots in their cockpit and make sure it was sealed correctly before they took off. Mind you, these pilots are flying the fastest aircraft manufactured at the time, and nevertheless, my grandfather tells them right before they leave, "I'll see you when you get there," with a wink. His brother, with the same last name, imagine Private Swenson or whatever, was the guy who would undo the cockpits for the pilots after they landed in the Pacific, and he would say to them, "Hey, you made it! I got here pretty fast, huh?" Producing the most astonished look of bewilderment and amazement one could muster. They ran this joke for quite some time and even got written up in the newspaper about it later on. I thought it was such a great old joke. Hope you guys liked it. My identical twin died. There are some people who knew him but did not know he was a twin. When I bump into them accidentally, they always freak out. I have identical twin brothers. As children, they constantly called each other ugly, which they did not get but made my mother laugh every time. They still do it today, mostly as a dumb old joke. One of my nicknames for my twin is ugly. Some of the others are Lefty and Spare Parts. When I was younger, me and my non-twin sister convinced our younger sisters, who were twins, that everyone in the world is born a twin, so you've got spare parts if you have an accident. We made up stories about our own twins and how much we missed them, but how they'll always live on as our lung or whatever. Then we asked them which one of them was the spare. Twins fighting is brilliant. They're so evenly matched. One of my high school teachers said she had her twin take and pass her driver's test for her. No one was ever the wiser. My dad is a twin, and every so often one would break up with the other one's girlfriend. Oh man. How could you say those things? How could you be so cold? I don't know, it's like I hardly even know you. Bye. I imagine however it actually transpired, it left the girlfriends pretty confused in some way or another. I went to a convention with two friends who were identical twins. They dressed the same one day, hoping to throw people off and have some laughs, which worked perfectly, at least until they got separated. Then they both ended up going around in circles using the "Have you seen someone who looks exactly like me?" line to try and find each other. My dad has an identical twin brother. This is his famous story. My family is Iranian, and it's mandatory for young men to serve in the army for a minimum of 2 years. They do have a few exceptions. For example, if your eyes are weak or if you can't see without glasses, then you don't have to serve. My dad had the weaker eyes between the two of them, so he failed his own exam. He took his brother's ID to the army officers and failed the exam again to get his brother out of that responsibility. I'm reminded of a story I saw here on Reddit about a really old man who was with his wife for like 50 years, eventually ends up passing away, and without ever having told anyone he had an identical twin. So his brother shows up to the funeral and chaos ensues. That would be an awesome story, like if the other old man's life is in shambles at the time, so he shows up and then decides to keep playing his brother, who's extremely successful and loved all over town. He fakes everything by acting hella confused about the funeral. I don't know, just a thought. 1. Took the SAT for my brother. 2. My brother had me go on a date with a girl he met online when he was away. How did the date go? Did he end up continuing to see her? Did she ever find out? I have so many questions, you need to explain. 2 weeks later, when he came back from the trip, he went on a date with her and she didn't detect it. Later, when we told her, she couldn't believe it. We were all so entertained by this for a long time. There are some questions that the poster of the story never answers satisfactorily. How did the date go? Did she stay together with the original brother? Or the second one? Think of us nosy weirdos reading your stories when you post them. Dated a girl a couple of years ago that had an identical twin. They said they'd switch class schedules for a day and stuff like that for fun. I was able to tell them apart due to the way that they presented themselves. Everyone has slightly different facial expressions and stuff like that. For fun, my girlfriend would leave the room I was in and her twin would sometimes come in and pretend to be her. Rarely worked. Fun game though, and no, I didn't have a three-way with them, so don't ask. Man, if you noticed that you were talking to the sister, you should have played it off like you didn't know. Then when your girlfriend came back in, said stuff like, "Oh man, you've never kissed me so passionately before, that was amazing." My sister and I were handed each other's picture forms on our senior year picture day in high school. We thought it might be funny to not switch them back, take each other's yearbook, school ID card pictures, and have a few people know we did it. Harmless shenanigans, right? Then one day at the end of the year, after SATs, AP tests, and college applications were all over, I got called into the principal's office. This had never happened to me before, and I had no idea why on earth I'd be called down, since I hadn't gotten into any trouble. I get there, and my sister has already arrived, and I'm just like, oh crap. Principal sits us down and tells us that when cross-referencing our school ID photos and the driver's licenses we provided at the SAT, College Board found a discrepancy and was investigating the possibility that we might have taken each other's tests. I hadn't even thought about that being a possibility, and all the blood went to my stomach. My sister and I freaked out, and as calmly as we could tried to explain what we thought was a harmless prank. But he kept a straight face and insisted that if there was any possibility that we switched tests, our scores would be invalidated. After about 10 minutes of explaining and reasoning with him about how we'd comply with any investigation, but we swear we took our own tests and so on, he calmly told us it was all a joke. I felt like I was going to pass out. He was laughing his butt off and saying things like, "Got you good," and reassuring us that everything was fine and that we should go back to class. Turns out that since we have family in the school district, the principal had heard that my sister and I switched and decided it would be brilliant to make us think our futures were in danger. In his defense, it was an objectively fantastic prank, and his delivery was so level and authoritative, it at no point occurred to us that College Board doesn't reference yearbook photos to confirm identities. Props to him for creativity, but what goes around comes around. In conclusion, sister and I switched places on a yearbook day. Our principal pranked us hard months later by making us think our life careers were in danger. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not a twin, but Asian. Back in middle school, my friend and I took each other's classes for an entire day, and no one noticed. I think the best one I ever heard was twins who worked super ultra overtime at the same job by simply pretending to be the same person and trading off shifts, putting in a 120 hours a week or so. A teacher of mine who's a triplet told us that once she took an exam for her sister that she already took and studied for, got an A- for herself and an A for her sister. And the third triplet got a D because the other two excluded her from the scheme. Honestly, being an identical twin is not so much about cool pranks as it is responding to people who ask, "Why are you so nice to them in chem class and then totally ignore me when I try to talk to you in English?" Or this, most common problem, "Guy, hey, what's up? Love the new hair." Me internally, "Do I know this guy? I didn't do anything special to my hair. Who are you? I can't remember who anyone is." Then out loud, "Hello, Guy. How brutal was that test the other day, right?" Me internally again, "Maybe he's in my psych class? Wait, did we even have a test? Maybe just go along with it. Oh, I'm totally screwed for next week." Guy, "Next week? The final's not until the end of the quarter." Finally, "Oh no, he thinks I'm my twin. Should I say something? That'd be awkward. I'll look like an idiot for just pretending to know him. He might get embarrassed. Maybe I can just wing it and no one will have to know that I'm me." At this point in the conversation, I decide if I should continue to be my twin or reveal myself. This is definitely my fault, in part, because I'm so bad at remembering faces. People in my classes, people at bars, people from past classes. I'll meet people on a smoke break and find out that, to my surprise, they've been sitting the next table over from me for a few weeks. Add twinliness into the mix and it's so awkward. Imagine the "is he waving at me" feeling all the time. I get that, plus a conversation. If they ask for help or make it obvious that they just want to chat, I tell them I'm the twin. My brother and I went to different colleges and didn't generally reveal to the friends we made that we each had a twin. One day, a group of people approached me in the street, calling me by my brother's name and asking me if I'd like to join them in the pub. I knew that my twin brother was already at the pub, so I said I'd bet them free drinks if I beat them to the pub in a foot race, even if I gave them a head start. They agreed and ran off at top speed while I stood there casually checking my watch and buffing my fingernails on my lapel, only for them to arrive exhausted and find me standing at the bar, drink already in hand. It's doubly impressive that he managed to change clothes on the way to the pub. I have a twin sister. I'm a guy. My little brother was born 2 years later on the same day. However, now that we're older, we look practically identical, close enough to fool his kids at least. When we do stuff together, we often get asked if we're twins. I answer yes, he answers no. This will need some backstory. My wife is a twin. Her sister and her both work at the same camp. My wife worked at the camp during the school year, while my sister-in-law worked during the summer when there was a lot more staff. Basically, they were trading places all the time, but staff of the camp would change during those times as well. Summer staff versus non-summer staff. So it was never really an issue. My wife worked mostly in the kitchen, while her sister worked as a counselor. Generally, the two were never seen together when they were both working there. It should also be said that my sister-in-law was often mistaken for a few other people around camp anyway, which only helped the situation in the end. At the end of the week, the groups of campers would do skits. One group of campers decided their skit would be about a machine that would multiply things. So my sister-in-law decided to help them out. The skit came down to the campers saying that my sister-in-law was such a hard worker that she needed a clone to help out around camp. At this point, the campers in this particular group knew about her twin, but most of the other campers did not. They turned on the machine and put my sister-in-law in. Out came her and a boy that had the same hair color and style, but that wasn't quite right. They got rid of the boy and put her back in. Out came a girl with a different hair color, but at least it was a girl this time. Next, the machine spit out a girl with the right hair color but not quite the same build. The fourth time, the machine spits out my wife. Being a nearly identical twin, this basically blew the audience away. In conclusion, my wife and sister-in-law freaked out some kids and even some adults with their shenanigans. What you guys don't understand, and maybe some other twins can back me up here, is that it's not so much tricking the teacher when switching classes as it is keeping all the other students quiet about it, since they can usually tell right away. At least for me and my brother anyways. My sister and I have picked on my partner quite a bit. We've tricked him in mostly harmless ways, but it's fun to watch his reaction. Other than that, we've always had the same schedules at school, so we haven't really taken advantage of our twin powers. I'm curious to see other responses.
I dated an identical twin in high school and I was always terrified that they would frick with me. The only way that I could tell them apart was because my boyfriend had a dot on his forehead. But what if they'd drawn one on the other twin and had him pick me up just to mess with me? Ah, the anxiety.
Note to self, never date twins. Or perhaps I'll end up meeting someone that has a twin without telling me in any case. And then the charade will go on even longer. Oh god, this is terrifying. I worked in a locked psychiatric ward while my twin brother works in a local emergency room. According to him, he has had at least 2 scary as frick psych patients come up to him saying,
"Hey John, you crazy frick, how are ya?"
And then ensues a long, scary conversation that he is not me in. I knew a pair of identical twins in high school who fricked with people all the time. I quickly learned how to tell the difference out of self-defense, and they always gave me grief for ruining their fun. We'll call them Steve and Dave. Anyway, here's the story they told me. At their high school, they were both starters for the football team. One was a running back and the other the fullback. For 4 years, Dave blocked for Steve, as Steve got the yards, the touchdowns, and the records. In the final game of their senior year, they switched jerseys without telling their coach, and for one game, Steve blocked for Dave. Dave set the school's single-game rushing record under Steve's name. Because they were blabbermouths, the story got out and the coach was teed off at them for lying and for making him look like he'd put the wrong brother at the running back the whole time. I had a good friend growing up whose dad was a twin. A group of us girls went to the movies one night. Twin's dad's daughter goes to the bathroom while we wait for her in the lobby. Wouldn't you know it, not even 5 seconds later, we see her dad in the distance holding hands with another woman. We start freaking out, thinking we've caught her dad cheating. Friend comes out and we explain the situation, ready for battle. She laughs and says, "Oh, that's my aunt and uncle." Then she goes up to them and gives them a hug. My twin sister and I aren't really able to fully utilize our ability due to not living with each other for most of our lives, but we do like to have fun with it. If we visit each other's town with a new group of friends, we'll switch places with one another and always make the newcomer look like they're amazing at figuring out random tips and tricks of the city. On a more serious note, my sister and I switched places about 8 months ago in order to save her from a terrible boyfriend. My sister is too sweet to her to fly, but she really needed to dump this guy, so we switched places. I met up with the jerk at the bar and told him very honestly that him and I, my sister, couldn't be together due to his abusive nature. Not identical, but fraternal, still both girls, which makes more alike than not alike. We would usually say things at the same time, but that was a coincidence. When we realized this, we started doing it on purpose to creep people out, and it really creeped them out. One especially that I remember was in 8th grade. A dude always told my sister she confused her with me, so we knew that if he saw us together, he would say something along the lines of, "You're totally identical." So the time comes and he says that, so we go and say at the same time, "What are you talking about? We're totally different." The look on his face was priceless. I wish I could have recorded it. This doesn't really go with abusing my powers of identity so much as going out of my way to not be mistaken as my twin sister. She dated some D-bag in high school who literally could not tell us apart at all. He began pursuing her, but since he was an idiot, he didn't even really take the time to get to know the difference between us two. He would mistakenly hug me, or be flirty, or check me out, or call my sister's name, all while my twin was standing 1 foot away. It became too awkward for me to the point where I just completely ignored his presence and didn't make eye contact when he was around, so he'd finally stop mixing us up. Sometimes that didn't work, so I would immediately sarcastically insult him and throw in a couple of dudes and bros to solidify the fact that I was the non-romantic twin. Even then, this moron couldn't read the flashing signs, so I just started to turn around and walk away whenever he approached. He eventually picked up that his twin was the one who wasn't a complete B-word to him. What's the most hilariously useless magic item you've ever had in Dungeons & Dragons? In my last campaign, my players got a hammer that shoots confetti and makes a party blower sound on crits. A dramatic moment happened where he had to put his pet owlbear down, as it was morphing into a monstrosity because of the big bad evil guy. Because the creature was on the ground morphing, he auto-crit. The beast lies there, writhing in pain, trying to hold on to its own self for as long as possible. You lift your hammer solemnly into the air, feeling the weight of not only the weapon, but the situation. As you bring it down, you feel flesh give as the skull has been pulverized from the transformation. The sound of teeth clacks against the ground, echoing in the room around you. The party looks at the ground, and a moment of silence consumes you all. So I'm doing my second video on Dungeons & Dragons stories in 2 weeks, don't hate. And yes, every time the chance to do this comes up, I'm going to leap at it like the hyper-obsessed nerd that I am. The +3 sword of Edward Tumbleton slaying. Edward Tumbleton was a tailor in a nearby city. They discovered a sword that was very effective at killing him. Just him. Neither the party nor any other person on the planet had any reason to kill the guy. The party ended up killing him by blowing up his shop with a fireball. The sword was never used.
Poor Edward Tumbleton. I think at some point he got on the bad side of an artificer who told him, "I have a sword with your name on it," and it turned out to be true.
Gave my party a sash of swimming, see retextured aquatic cummerbund. They put it on the donkey pulling their wagon and promptly forgot about it. I haven't though. 2 years later, I haven't.
Haha, still waiting on the moment that the donkey will be the only one to survive the flood.
The donkey is going to get sold or killed, and they won't remember the sash of swimming. That's what my party would do. The mug of pea warm chongo. Turn any liquid that enters its internal volume into, you guessed it, warm chongo, the temperature of fresh pee-pee. They threw it into the sea, and yes, while it would eventually produce an infinite amount of PWC, it didn't produce it faster than the various flora and fauna of the sea could consume it as current carried it away. The toils of all that be. Help not the primal fault. Rivers flow into the sea, yet still the sea is salt. I used to love making magical items that were off the wall. I felt like the game's items didn't reflect the silly stuff someone would make if they had the time and manic attention to detail. There's a devil called Chiton. It's chain-wrapped, chain-swinging, freaky, pain-loving Hellraiser type. My party fought one in a dungeon. He's wearing a unique amulet that makes chain. You place a piece of chain on the surface and the amulet starts slowly, magically generating a chain of the same dimensions. It only makes 10 feet a day, but over time you could make a few gold selling mundane chain. I just thought it was thematic and interesting. The party left the dungeon, went to town, found a smith, and poured their entire life savings into making 2 links of solid gold chain that would make Flava Flav weep. And I wept. What a fool I was. Reminds me of when my DM, tired of us breaking down doors, introduced adamantine doors on a massive castle, but he let us lift them off the hinges. We got so rich we decided to abandon the campaign. I gave one of my players a delicious magical sandwich that regenerated itself each day as long as you didn't eat the crust. It didn't offer any benefit when you ate it, it was just an infinite sandwich. That sandwich became a character in and of itself. The amount of time that was spent talking about the sandwich, its contents, the flavor, etc. was crazy. Every player described how their character would ogle the sandwich whenever it was brought out. That character is gone now, but she kept that sandwich right up until retirement. She spends her time in Candlekeep Library, devouring knowledge and also the sandwich.
Wait, as long as you don't eat the crust, what if you cut it in half and separate the two halves? Would each half generate a whole sandwich as long as there were no bites taken out of it?
It's the deep philosophical questions like this that keep me coming back to Reddit. Yeah, there are any number of minor items in D&D that are capable of changing the course of human or humanoid development when you think about their broader implications, if they were used to their best effect instead of just by a random bunch of idiot heroes. Fun stuff.
Ring of fire detection. Range, touch.
I had a merchant selling some knickknacks, and one of them was a ring of fire identification. If you pointed it at something, it would declare in a loud, clear voice, "Fire," or "Not fire." Obviously useful when facing illusory flames, but for some reason the party didn't spring for it. A fire distinguisher? A rope that couldn't be tied, not even for a second. They were facing a dragon who loved puzzles and eating non-dragons. They gave him the rope and made the deal that if the dragon couldn't make a knot within an hour, then the dragon would need to let them pass through. Our party's DM gave us a magical, mysterious bag. When we opened it, we pulled out a turtle. We reach in again, thinking there must be something else to this bag. We pull out a rabbit. Still thinking that there must be something else, something more meaningful to this item, we reach in again and pull out a 9-foot-tall deer. It really was just a backpack that lets you pull out random animals. My bard proceeds to use Speak with Animals, then charms the deer to let us ride him. We named him Preston, and he's been our ridiculously massive means of transportation ever since. The Rod of Irony was a fishing rod that you could only find by fishing it up. Using it only fished up more rods of irony, we used them for firewood. I'd become a fishing rod salesman. They found a wand that creates a random and unique lock that incorporates itself into the substance it's used on, so it might make a suspicious recess in a stone wall or a brass-plated keyhole on a wooden door. If probed with lockpicks, you would encounter moving tumblers or some other appropriate but unique locking mechanism. It didn't magically create a compartment, it just made a lock. Even if you used it on a desk drawer, it never made a latch or bolt. So the drawer would open perfectly fine while having a useless metal cylinder with tumblers that weren't connected to anything. If you successfully picked the lock, it always felt like a real lock despite lacking the physical pieces, it would make a soft chiming noise and the lock would evaporate. The wand was a training tool used by a famous locksmith to challenge himself and his students. It had no practical application at all outside of that profession. It ended up being used by the druid, who had ranks in magical device, don't ask, to constantly mess with the rogue. The druid would take every opportunity to wild shape into a small critter good for scouting, and then place fake locks anywhere the rogue might conceivably try to use the search skill. The rogue's increasing paranoia whenever he found a lock, and his overblown promises of vengeance every time a random hole in a floorboard wasted a minute of his time and chimed at him, was a pretty good gag. It turned a little sour when the druid made an extra lock on an honest-to-goodness treasure chest. The rogue rolled a natural 20 to pick the first lock and got a chiming noise. Then he rolled a 3 and triggered an energy-draining trap that permanently lost him 5 HP. After that, the rogue stole every wand the druid had in the middle of the night and threw them all into a bottomless pit in the Underdark. I had a magical rod of rubber duck. Gave it to the party as a joke item because they kept asking for weird crap. Not one of them chose to identify it. It was an artifact-level rubber duck. Once it was part of your inventory, it would never leave it unless it wanted to. It had wisdom and intelligence of 28, sentience, and it could be attuned. It was actually a great old one that could grant anyone a wish spell with 100% accuracy at the cost of 2 of the caster's levels. Nobody learned that it was probably the most powerful item in the game. And what is the function of a rubber duck? In the first campaign I played, the party began their journey by finding an orc woman in a tavern whose baby was stolen, and what she found in its place was a knife with a weird symbol on the handle. She sent us with the knife in search of the baby. We spent hours and hours and session after session never using the knife in combat. We then found out that the knife would turn anyone it cut into a lizard. My character ate peanut butter off that knife more than once before finding this out. It may just be me, but that item sounds far from useless. Facing a beholder? Slice. Now you're a gecko. Unstoppable vampire lord? Nope, it's a chameleon now. There's a reason polymorph is a popular spell for getting rid of powerful enemies while you wipe up their minions. My party has been carrying around a wand of disguised self they found in a magic store bargain bin for over a year and haven't used it yet. Except that's not actually what it is, hence why it was in the bargain bin. It's actually a wand of this guy's elf, which once a day can summon an incorporeal elven servant to carry out a simple task for you. I was so happy with myself for coming up with that one, and so sad they never even tried to use it, so the pun goes unheard forever. My infamous Horn of Resounding Quacks was a hit, summoned any duck within a half-mile radius of the person using it. The party never went hungry after that. For clarification, it was indeed to call any and all ducks within the half-mile radius, but it wasn't a matter of instant teleportation. The ducks have to travel, but do so willingly, answering the call of the horn. Poor ducks. If you're an evil DM, you can get them used to it, so they never bring food anymore, and then they put them in a duckless place. Have fun starving, boys. Depends on how you read it. Summon as in any duck within a half-mile is summoned to you, there need to be ducks, or summon. Within a half-mile radius around you, a duck is randomly summoned. If there were no ducks before, there is one now. It might be out of your sight, quacking, or standing behind some rocks a quarter-mile away, but it's there nonetheless. Congratulations! The ethereal plane, the seventh layer of hell, and the deadly ruins of the great archwizard Asgordon are now infested with ducks, because your gosh damn bard kept blowing the horn every 3 seconds. I could see this. Some evil demigod lording over his demon minions, sneering as fire and smoke swirl around him, and then a duck appears on his lap. Then another on top of his throne. Suddenly, there's a dozen ducks all quacking about. Then hundreds. This is actually an incredibly powerful magic horn. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I gave my players an alchemy jug. They had it for most of the campaign, and mostly forgot about it apart from the odd joke. But when building to the end, they used it to torture my main villain. They'd captured him. To find out what it was and how to stop him, they used the jug to pour mayonnaise down his throat until he agreed to talk. That gave them advantage on the intimidation check they had to carry out, which they succeeded on. So mayonnaise is an instrument of torture. In my 3rd edition early days, my friend's older brother was DMing a game for my friends, my sister, and me. One of the items we got rolled on the random table was a gust of wind fan. It's exactly what it sounds like. Wave it, creates a powerful enough gust of wind to propel a boat and possibly rips itself to tatters. Threw it in the pack and forgot about it. A few sessions later, we're defending a town from waves of invaders. The final boss is a Cyclops or an Etin or something. Big bruiser, we see it approaching, with enough time to prepare for its arrival. My sister asks us to use all of our healing potions and then give her the glass vials, which we do. Then she turns to the DM and calmly explains how she takes the vials with her up a guard tower. She smashes and grinds them up, waits for an opportune time, then uses the fan to blow a gust of powdered glass particles into the Etin's eyes. The look on this man's face, a cross between, "Holy crap, that's awesome. I'm so happy a story like this is in my campaign world now," and "Frick, this boss was supposed to be difficult." In a game I'm currently in, our DM gave us a flask of endless water. It can produce water in a trickle, a flood, or a deluge that shoots 30 gallons of water in one turn. Our cleric has just fallen from a bridge over a chasm, and through clever bullcrapping, our sorcerer has managed to catch the falling cleric with a web spell. As we're all racking our brains to figure out a way to save them, our cleric pulls out the flask and uses the water cannon mode to propel herself back onto the bridge, using the web strands as a fulcrum. This sounds like what happens when you play D&D with engineers. I'm not sure me or any of my players would have ever thought about using it in that capacity. More water-based shenanigans follow. I had to literally ban the 3.5 spell Create Water because my entire party rolled classes that could learn it. The default is Cleric or Druid, but there's books that award it to Arcane casters as well, and solved everything with the stupid cantrip. It would blow your mind how many puzzles, traps, combat encounters, and social situations can be solved by liberal application of magic water. Someone refuses to talk, waterboard them. Pressure plates might be down this hallway, set them off from distance with a flood. There's a locked anything, break it by dropping water from a height. Ambushed, turn the road to mud and run away. Setting an ambush, turn the road to mud and wait. Starving, you can survive for 10 days on just water. Need to escape from a conversation, a pipe bursts, and the building floods. The list goes on. Turns out physicists and engineers can turn a cantrip into the power equivalent of a 9th level spell, given enough thought.
I have an idea for my next character now.
Your party and DM do have to be on board for this to work. We would literally spend half of a 6-hour session doing math and digging through the books in order to make this kind of thing happen. We found it fun. Most tables likely would not find it fun. We ended up with Excel sheets for things like newtons of force in terms of D, X, and air expenditure by race in terms of volume per hour, accounting for increased and decreased size categories. They did all of this to justify plans like shrinking themselves down, jumping in an extra-dimensional hole with fixed dimensions, and mailing themselves into a building. Yes, there was an easier way. No, it wasn't as much fun. The ban was fairly well agreed on eventually. The cantrip shenanigans were amusing for a few weeks, but they ultimately got tired of already having the solution to every encounter, and we agreed to limit its use out of combat, non-encounter scenarios. You want to create a slip and slide to navigate a wizard's tower? No. Once my party got a huge, beautiful magic sword which was improperly identified as a sword of ogre slaying. Instead, it was a cursed sword of ogre saying. Whoever wielded it would only be able to yell, "Ogre!" at things. Several adventures later, they were attempting to catch a thief who was evading them. They came up with the brilliant idea of setting the sword as bait and just going about their business. Sure enough, sometime later they heard, "Ogre! Ogre! Ogre!" ring out through the town, and they caught him without consequence. Reminds me of the Ring of Hunan influence from volume 3 or 4 of the Encyclopedia Magica from 2nd edition AD&D. Whenever attempted to be used, it caused a painful burning sensation in the user's mouth that could only be removed by consuming 1d4 plates of rice. The Ring of Hunan influence. This jade ring is decorated with oriental characters including Fu Manchu and Charlie Chan. It affects all food eaten by the wearer. There is no noticeable change in taste, but 1 round after being eaten, the food begins to burn for 1d4 HP damage per round. Water only makes the burning worse. Plus 1 HP to the damage for 1 round. Only eating 1d6 plates of rice will ease the pain. However, no matter how much food is consumed, the wearer still feels hungry an hour later. For anyone who doesn't know, Hunan is a Chinese province known for their hot and spicy food, which I assume this is a reference to. Not while I was DMing, but my favorite useless magic items to this day are the Boots of Quickstep. Once per turn, you may click your heels as an action, to gain an action. It resulted in my character beginning each of his turn clicking his heels. It was marvelous. Once had my party find a magic spoon. It emitted a terrible aura of dark illusion magic, and merely holding it filled players with a sense of dread from its sheer chaotic energy. Its in-game abilities? It worked like a fork instead of a spoon. The arcane spork of +5 anxiety? Let it be known that the narrator is cackling maniacally and writing down magic item ideas while writing this script. A modified version of the 5e wind fan that only works once a day and immediately looks tattered after use, so you can never use it multiple times, but it only works once every 24 hours. Now, it sounds like a not bad magical item, but the only times it's ever been used is to show people what it does. So an NPC says, "Hey, what's this fan do?" The player grins, "I'll show you." Useless gust of wind noises. It happened 5 times and then it got sold off to the underground scrapper they were working for. Was playing a campaign on a tropical island type of place and an enemy knocked my weapon off a cliff, so I used a coconut as an improvised weapon, crit with that thing 4 times in a row, and decided to keep it for getting the final blow on people. Was a barbarian and the DM liked that the coconut was killing things so much he had me keep track of the kills, and eventually I had a 3+ coconut that on a crit would ricochet until it didn't kill something. So basically he gave me a coconut of great potential. A few odds and ends, a can of dehydrated water, just an empty can, a wand of kindling, just a stick to burn, a scroll of raise dead that makes a dead body float 6 inches off the ground, a ring of invisibility that turns only the ring invisible on use. One of my one-shot campaigns had all players at 8th level, so I wanted to give them magical items, but not anything too OP. So one of my monk players wanted a decanter of endless water, so I changed it to a homebrew version where it didn't do the stream, fountain or geyser things, but instead it would pour endless alcoholic beverages. He could make the decanter fill with mojitos, or margaritas, or a Heineken, whatever, but only to get drunk. I thought it was harmless and fine, until I realized he'd selected the Way of the Drunken Master and got drunk on command anywhere and everywhere. It was quite fun. I'm writing a new one-shot, and I might take some ideas from this post too. A DM once gave our party a mortar and pestle that let us grind out spices in fairly large quantities. We were supposed to use it as a hook to get involved with an army. It would have let the cooks keep the soldiers happy and put us in good graces of a local lord. Instead, we wound up completely abandoning that questline, setting up a spice shop, and went into business. It was supposed to be a one-off adventure, but we had a great DM and it turned into the best long-term campaign I've ever played in. It had a court intrigue, assassination attempts, war, curses, everything you could want. It ended when we all went our separate ways at the end of high school, with one of the business partners, Human, dying of old age, another, Elvin, selling his shares of the business to the dead one's heirs to retire, and my gnome faking his own death and leaving town to avoid a jealous husband, literally riding off into the sunset on a flying merchant ship. Man, you know how much spices cost once upon a time? More than their weight in gold. Saffron is still worth more than its weight in gold now. A quill of penmanship and literacy allowed any creature to write their thoughts down in perfectly legible common. A rogue in the party was obsessed with capturing different creatures and monsters to learn their thoughts, only to find that most animals just wrote onomatopoeia versions of normal animal sounds, like roar or quack. The party was sick of it and in a later adventure agreed to trade off the quill to a half-orc bodyguard in exchange for information to ambush one of the campaign's villains. The half-orc would become a Thomas Paine-like thought leader, and his first 2 books were dedicated to the party. I got a corncob pipe that made bubbles. Seriously, that's just it. Just bubbles. They didn't put people to sleep, they didn't explode under flames, nothing. Maybe it would make someone's eyes burn if they rubbed it in. We were assaulting a town and I was part of the crew taking the gatehouse. We barred the windows and doors and I put the pipe under the edge of the door and blew it like I was inflating my own life raft in the ocean. Soon, bubbles were pouring out at the seams and the guards inside were panicking hardcore. One of them tripped on something and hurt himself on his own weapon. Once we opened the door, they came stumbling out and we cut them down while they were disoriented and distracted. Shortly thereafter, I traded the stupid pipe for various types of arrows at a Fletcher. I had that damn pipe for a long time and only used it once. We were playing through a pre-made campaign. At one point, the players retrieved a magical artifact, which turned out to be an orb of control dragons. It does exactly what you'd expect. In theory, it could have been very useful, except no dragons were showing up in the campaign, so it was basically useless. It did, however, lead to a running gag where our most paranoid player kept attempting to control dragon random NPCs to see if they were secretly dragons in disguise. Belt of teleportation that only transported the belt and the pants of the wearer to an unoccupied location within 60 feet of the user. I put it in as a gag, but the players started using it to startle opponents by teleporting pants just above them. The shenanigans increased when they discovered the belt also teleported whatever was in the pants' pockets. My groups have a tradition of gifting players useless magic items with a birthday theme on their in-real-life birthday. 2 of the favorites that I bestowed so far include a pair of boots that drop streamers everywhere he walked and a ring that turned the wearer's poop into chocolate cake, which could be eaten to regain 1 hit point. Why did you name this ring of healing poop cake? The Chocolate Fudge Maker. My DM gave my character a glove that when the word bravo is said, emits the sound of applause. My friend's character used it intentionally to blow our cover infiltrating an enemy stronghold because he wanted to fight something. Our GM gave us an item which was the head of an ancient goblin king. This severed head had the power to give good advice to us, but it was completely unrelated to the question. What should we do to kill the dragon? Remember to wash your hands after using the bathroom. How do parents of gold diggers feel about their kids' relationships? I'm an older brother. I finished school, got a job, got married, bought a house, and had kids. My parents are kind of average about me. They're proud of my family, but feel I didn't reach my earning potential. We got some inheritance from my grandmother, and I used it to modernize my house and buy a car. My sister finished school, got a job, started screwing her boss, moved into his house, got a promotion, splashed half of her inheritance on holidays and clothes, and the other half on a sports car, because she doesn't need a mortgage deposit now that she has a boyfriend with his own flat. My dad literally called me to tell me how proud he was of her buying a sports car all on her own. It would have been hilarious if it didn't highlight my parents' messed up values and complete blindness to their daughter's dependency on her butthole boss/boyfriend. I haven't seen the guy for a few years, but an old friend of mine started out as a gold digger with his girlfriend. He started dating her 4 years ago because he found out that she was rich. The dude came from a broken home with some really messed up parents. He also had ADHD as well as a couple of other learning disabilities. Quit high school in grade 11, but started dating her shortly before that. Her dad was filthy frickin' rich, as he had a lot to do with the mines in the area. A CEO in a huge mining town. He was seemingly mooching at first, didn't go to work, didn't do anything but drink and do substances with his girlfriend. More than once I heard that the father was going to kick him out, but was persuaded by his little girl not to. He eventually falls for the girl and not for the money and decides to take it upon himself to change. Out of nowhere, he says, "I want a job, I don't care what it is," to the girl's dad, and her dad puts him to work. Now, when I knew him, he was famous for his work ethic in intensive labor jobs. Dude was like the freaking Energizer Bunny. He worked his butt off, earned his promotions, and went back and finished high school, completed 2 trades, and the 2 of them bought a house together. To my knowledge, he rarely drinks and hasn't touched substances since he started working. I was pretty surprised because when I went to school with him, he caused nothing but trouble. Cousin is a gold digger. She was actually taught to be one by her mother, who married a very hardworking and self-made successful man, but wasn't quite up to her own dreams. When my cousin was in college, she needed a new car, so she went to the dealership, flirted with the salesman, banged him for a week, and got a loaded new car at his own inside cost, then dumped him the next day. That was pretty par for the course.
Car salesman to himself? Yep, still got it.
And ladies and gentlemen, we're back on topics that make the narrator despair at the state of humanity. Don't be like this woman. Other way round for me, I'm a 21-year-old girl and my father is a gold digger. He's on his 3rd wife, who's a rich, former antiques dealer. They go on annual 6 to 10 month holidays in various continents, staying in 5-star hotels the whole time. They live in a penthouse overlooking Sydney Harbour, including the Harbour Bridge and Opera House. All of my brothers work constantly for everything they have. I'm a uni student who works 6 to 10 shifts a week at a pub, and I live in a semi with my mum, with a mortgage that's like twice as much as the bloody house is worth. Honestly though, I'm glad he found a rich wife. Means I won't have to take care of him when he's dying. My aunt and uncle were cash flow rich. Tons of cash, spent it all, no savings. So they looked really rich, but literally didn't have a penny. Their irresponsible behavior rubbed off on their 2 daughters. Got ridiculous degrees and then glamour jobs that didn't pay. Daddy wrote them a check every month to cover the difference. They dated male models who were as broke as they were. Then one day, Mummy and Daddy had to file for bankruptcy and the daughters were informed they were being cut off. For good. No problemo. They bought tiny bikinis and met 2 lawyers the next day, and each one married the lawyer they met. One lawyer was bald, the other fat. From male models to that. How does Mum feel about the daughters? Brags about how successful their husbands are at every chance and how they're living this fabulous lifestyle.
One lawyer was bald and the other fat, from male models to that. Did you just bust out a freestyle?
One of my college friends was always open about wanting to find a rich guy to take care of her. She signed up for a dating site focused on wealthy older men looking for young attractive women. About a month after signing up, she met a guy through the site and went on a few dates. She was 21 and he was in his mid-40s. This would have been about February of that year. In March, he bought her a new Mercedes, and by the end of April had leased a brand new condo in Toronto for her, so she could be closer to him. She moved into the condo on the 1st of May. By November, she announced she was pregnant and they got married in the following spring, while my friend was 7 to 8 months pregnant. The kid is almost 2 now, and they legitimately seem like a happy married couple. She loves not having to work and spends as much time as she can at her parents', also fairly wealthy cottage. And her husband was on the website looking for a trophy wife to spend his money on, so there's an understanding between them. But from day one, she had the opinion of, I'm attractive and have a forward fashion sense, and this is what I want in life, which she found and fulfilled. She still keeps up her appearance as a stay-at-home wife, and they're always out at fancy dinners. I respect the crap out of both of them for knowing what they wanted and being mature about it.
Sounds like a win-win for everybody in this case. I've definitely known guys who are pretty open about wanting a trophy wife.
It is. There are so many relationships like this in Greenwich. It's like there was a freaking factory somewhere putting them together. It worked so well for them. Wife and husband don't love each other per se, but she's pretty and agrees to stay pretty, and he's rich and agrees to stay rich. Boom. Baby-making city. I'm not a gold digger, but my Chinese mother keeps telling me about the rich Asian girls who move to Cali and tries to get me to hook up with one. I don't see myself being happy with someone I have nothing in common with, though.
Funny, my Taiwanese mother keeps telling me to watch out for the gold-digging mainlanders that just want a passport and half my assets.
Good friends of mine, a bit older than me, a brother and sister. Sister is a gold digger for sure. She's on her 4th marriage to a millionaire. They came from humble beginnings. The dad owns his own business, but is very middle of the road, middle class. The parents help the brother out a lot with money, and the sister constantly talks crap about him because of it, considers him a leech on their parents. Of course, the brother resents the sister for never having worked a day in her life, but vacations in Europe once a month. Thought I would answer because it's an interesting dynamic to have witnessed. People are very harsh in their judgment of who they consider gold diggers. It feels quite ridiculous sometimes to be the older sister-in-law to a gold digger. I'm older than her by 10 years, yet she gives me life lessons on a regular basis. For example, when she feels like she hasn't had a good day, she calls and says, money doesn't buy happiness. Tease me the frick off, because she has no idea what it's like to have real problems, like getting ready to lose your home or worrying that you're going to have to feed your kids that day. She married a guy 15 years older so that she could sit on her butt and shop. She has a huge house and no responsibilities. I'm not a jealous person. I'm happy for her if she'd just stop talking bullcrap about how hard she has it when she knows very well that her brother and I aren't doing well financially. She's also a bragger, constantly throwing it in my face like, "Come and see my new car, isn't it awesome? We're going away for the weekend, too. Can you babysit? Look at the pictures of this exotic place we're going. I can't wait." And I'm sitting there like I haven't taken vacation since my honeymoon. She knows this. I don't really blame her though. She's completely unaware of anyone else other than herself. Really, she doesn't do it for meanness, she's just dense. Yeah, marrying someone for their wealth and ease of life might be okay if both sides are aware of it, but then choosing to whine about your rich person problems and giving life lessons to your less well-off friend is a real crapbag move. Don't forget your roots, people. It's a job that takes time to perfect. It's not like the old days when you just keep shoveling pay dirt into the trommel until you find a nice streak. Sadly, the bygone days of hitting glory hole after glory hole just don't happen anymore. Most companies go bankrupt the very first year, and if you don't adhere to the strict environmental regulations, you could be kicked off a site at a moment's notice. Honestly, I'd rather have my daughter just find a nice rich doctor and become a housewife, but that's not her style. She always played with her brother's Tonka trucks. The Yukon is in her blood. Her grandfather was a gold digger too. If you marry for the money, you're going to earn every penny. Not sure where I heard that saying, but I think it's great. My ex was a gold digger. He couldn't handle that I'm happy not being filthy rich. I'm comfortable, that's enough. He left for a rich girl and then left her for a richer girl and married her. He's already cheated. I dodged a bullet. Isn't it more like the bullet took a turn? I think it's at least somewhat likely that most parents of gold diggers never thought that much about their children's lives, ever. This makes sense. An ex of mine used to complain about her dad, a doctor who never had time for her. When I was dating her, I found out that her ex was 25 years older than us and had founded and sold a company for tens of millions of dollars. She currently is not working and lives at her family's beach house. This will probably get buried, but I'll post it anyway. I'm not the parent, but the child of a gold digger. My dad was educated exclusively at private schools and elite Ivy League education. He got his master's in finance by age 24. He's from a politically connected family and could be making millions on Wall Street. Instead, he took much lower-paying jobs in order to help raise me and my brother. My mum has her degree in art history. She dumped her previous fiancé and met my dad while celebrating that she'd dumped her old flame. They got married, and within 9 years they were divorced. I constantly heard them fight about how my father wouldn't give her some spending money. He repeatedly told her that if she'd like to spend money, that she had a degree that she could earn her own with. This was not acceptable to her, so they got divorced. Within 2 years, my mum was remarried to a doctor and quit the job she had since doctors' wives don't work. Within 3 months, the marriage fell apart. Throughout my upbringing, my mother constantly beat it into me and my brother's skull that you should always have the finest things, never settle. She would always make comments in private about how people didn't always look their finest. This was in spite of the fact that she refused to work a job that was beneath her. To my mum, how something makes her look is infinitely more important than anything else. Her new fiancé is awesome and he's the VP of a branch of banks. She spins this as, he's the VP of a bank. She would always brag about where her husbands, at the time, were educated. My brother works in business, and she spins this as, he's a consultant who has clients in Manhattan, Toronto, etc. I work at a bakery doing hourly-level tasks. She tells her friends, my youngest works as a baker, making organic, high-end bagels. Despite earning into the six figures, she somehow never has money, yet just bought a new BMW. My mum is both a gold digger and a fricking snob. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I have a brother who tried to be a gold digger. He met a girl in the then AOL chat rooms. She lived in the next county. They got friendly and started to meet together on a friendly face-to-face basis. At one point, she invited him to her home where she lived with her parents. This is when my brother discovers the girl's family is rich. They lived in a giant mansion, lots of acreage, servants, and had a huge game room, complete with pinball machines, video game machines, a jukebox, etc. The girl's father, as it turned out, once owned a company that distributed classic TV shows for syndicated reruns on TV stations all across the country. I say once owned because he had it sold for the sum of $200 million back then, and the girl was an only child. Hence, she stood to inherit everything of her father's someday. My brother was excited, even knowing her only a few weeks, in spite of not being in love with this girl. Behind her back, he was talking marriage and living in the lap of luxury for the rest of his life. How he had made it if he played his cards right. Unfortunately for my brother, the girl was of a very liberal persuasion. She had no respect for herself, cheating on one boyfriend with another and another. Even more unfortunate for my brother, he wasn't able to get in on any of that action with the girl. She was sleeping with every other boy except for my brother. He couldn't get himself out of the friend zone. He was the only one who couldn't get himself out of the friend zone. On one occasion, one of the girl's boyfriends made an unannounced visit to this girl at her home. Her family naively and innocently cheerfully directed him upstairs where the girl was. He went upstairs to the girl's bedroom and walked in on her going down on some other guy, the both of them completely in the naughty. The boyfriend, in a rage, grabbed the stalker's guy, grabbed him out of the room, and tossed him down the stairs. The family was shocked to see this unclothed guy come tumbling down the stairs into the room with them. Anyway, over a few months' time, my brother and this girl drifted apart to the point where they never saw each other or conversed online again. He watched his dream of being rich fade into the sunset. I don't know where that girl is today or what happened to her. How is he her boyfriend, but was still in the friend zone? I'm quite amazed you've made that douche nozzle sound like the victim. Good job, that's a skill.
Yeah, I don't get it. It sounded like he wasn't even dating her.
He met her at a beauty salon and was interested in her type of purse. That should say something. He's happy that she has an ample backside and knows that she's dated others that are well known. I'm worried that she is spending his money on cosmetic surgery when she should be buying toys for their kids. I want them to get a prenup. It's something that he needs to have. He started out as a dishwasher, got promoted to janitorial, and then to fry cook. He worked his way to a Mercedes, but I'm afraid that he would just have traded her up for some other girl anyway. Yep, that seems like an arrangement that could very well end in tears for one or the other person sooner or later, but adding kids to the mix makes it a little sadder. There's an entire town called Wellesley, Massachusetts, and its neighbor, Weston, Massachusetts, where all couples are made of rich guys who marry gold diggers/trophy wives. If you have a chance to be there, it's hysterical to watch. So self-absorbed and so self-centered. I'm sure there are other places like that in the US, but that's the one I know.
I have a family who lived there, and it's so true. My aunt, a doctor, married another doctor. She's the absolute minority there, and people simply cannot understand why she'd choose to have a career when she could just benefit from her husband's without doing any work. Mind-blowing.
You know, I'd rather they leached off someone rich than me. The talentless bums. My boss is extremely wealthy and is constantly dating young girls who are obviously gold diggers. Not very attractive guy pushing 60 who refuses to date anyone over 35. We all at the office recognize it and think, to ourselves of course, that it's sad and borderline pathetic. However, he's happy with what he does and loves the attention, so we all just go with the flow. I think it's obnoxious and think very little of his girlfriends, but whatever, it's his life and his money, and if that's how he wants to spend it, he can be my guest. I'm sure I can comment on behalf of my mother. The one time I dated someone with a good job, $100K a year, she was thrilled I'd found the kind of person she had prayed and hoped for. Someone who could take care of me. She has the opinion that I'm a little too lofty and in over my head for the real world, despite having always had a practical plan for myself, studying hard to graduate high school early, putting myself through college, always working a full-time job, if not two, to keep myself funded. Only once has she helped me financially. $600 I never even asked for. But this guy must be 100% a good catch because he bought her a new toaster when hers broke and an expensive radio she wanted for Christmas, i.e. the trickle-down economy. What takes care of me will benefit her. Mutual friend to both parties. I went to high school with the boyfriend and know the girlfriend from a mutual friend. They start dating because she was a rebound for him and he was willing to take her crap. Guy proposes last year and she denies him because she thinks she can do better. I know her sister and that's what she told me. Fast forward a year when he got another job and is in the middle of buying his first house and is doing better, she all of a sudden wants a ring and her name on the mortgage. All our mutual friends think she's pulling a scumbag move because she definitely wasn't going to stay with him before. Apparently the mum is putting her up to this, and the boyfriend is not enjoying buying his first house because he realizes now what a succubus he's dating. My ex is, or was, a gold digger. When her mum told me that she didn't think I could afford her daughter, it teed me off, but then I realized what the mum was really trying to tell me. Rich guys who are smart keep a low profile and never reveal their money until they're sure that the woman is sincere and not gold digging. There was a reality show about princes from foreign countries who came to America looking for a wife. They pretended to be regular schmoes until the right girl came along. One guy from India lived in a palace, and I mean with a capital P. He had over 100 servants just to maintain the place. I didn't see the end of the show, but I understand the sentiment. With the way divorce courts in America work, a stupid rich guy who isn't careful is going to be writing a check with a lot of zeros in it. Brother of a guy who married a gold digger. I pretty much know what mum thinks about the mess, though. My brother is an MD, very highly regarded, extremely highly paid. He did the classic marry a nurse thing. She barely put up with our mother and I, his only family, while dating. Once married, she turned into a psycho B-word from hell towards us. She's made his life miserable, but they have kids together, so he stays with her. He's put her through a couple more degrees because she didn't want to do nursing anymore, but wanted to do something else. Of course, she doesn't actually bother to use the degrees for anything, so it's a total waste of money. She does nothing but sit around the house all day, doesn't take care of it, but they have a maid so the house isn't a wreck. My mother and I both feel really sad for him. We're hoping that once the kids get old enough, he'll dump her sorry butt. Also hoping the kids don't turn out to be train wrecks. The older one has some serious anxiety problems, probably from her mum being a constant screaming B-word, but at least she can get free psych meds, so she's got that going for her. Mum has set up trusts for the kids and put in clauses preventing the psycho B-word from ever having any form of control over them or benefiting from them. So the kids will also be able to pay for their psychiatric care when they're out on their own, even if everything else goes to heck. Not a gold digger, but my mum is. To give you an idea, my biological dad was a World War II vet, loaded out the wazoo, boats, houses, businesses, everything, who was married to another woman when I was conceived. I'm 27, and she's on her third husband right now. A sweet 92-year-old man who bought her 2 cars, a house that was $250,000, and pays her bills so she doesn't work. This includes the $800 a week treatments for her dog. My sister sugared for a while, which I suppose is a form of gold digging. Everyone found it gross, including me. Now that I finally understand no matter how hard I work, I'll never not be poor, I'm considering it myself. I don't have the stomach for it. It's not the screwing the old guys part. I actually don't have much reaction to that at all. It's that there's a whole lot about it basically play acting as what every horrible man on earth expects a woman to be, and I just can't fake that. It's gross for one thing, obviously, but it's actually a lot of work being that kind of woman when it doesn't come naturally to you. Sugar babies earn every penny of that money tolerating these stupid, annoying old men. I suspect I went to school with many gold diggers. I went to an expensive private high school, so I suspect my former classmates are used to a certain lifestyle. I have them on Facebook, and I've seen 5 of those girls marry much older gentlemen. I want to believe there's more to the relationship, but they're fairly attractive, and their husbands are much, much older. Their wedding pictures, however, are quite pretty. I used to be friends with this girl. She kind of had ugly duckling syndrome. She was cool to be friends with, but she just wasn't someone you'd want to date. She was really into sports and kind of one of the guys. About 6 months after high school, she turned 18. Then she had this great boyfriend. All of the girls talked about how awesome he was and how he had a pool at his house, had a couple of nice cars, etc. We all go to this party at this guy's house, and we're hanging out around the pool, and this guy in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, comes out and starts talking to us. I thought it was her dad or something. She walks up to him and sticks his hand in the back of her bikini bottoms, and she playfully tries to pull away, but they make out. Pretty mind-blowing. Turns out this guy just retired from the Marines and was her dad's commanding officer. Next, all of her friends are hooking up with military retirees. I think him and her got married a couple of years later. My boyfriend's sister is 100% a gold digger and daddy's little girl. She married into a wealthy family at 25, divorced him, ka-ching, then married his best friend who was independently, and much more, wealthy. I guess she had to change her plans after her lucrative philosophy degree didn't work out. My niece married a guy she met at high school because his family was loaded. His dad died not too long ago and they inherited $272 million. I can't say I'm pro-gold digging, but damn. Who is that guy or girl that you work with? In my office, it's the
"I took the liberty" guy.
You come back from lunch and your desk is cleared of the project you had been working on. You run to the bathroom and find your freshly poured coffee replaced with your washed, empty mug. As you dare to say, "What the hell?" he comes around the corner of your cube.
"I took the liberty of straightening up your work area,"
and gleefully moves on to ruin someone else's afternoon. This can also be called the Helperton. That's when you go into his office and take the liberty of turning every single thing upside down. Work with a woman who repeats,
"Having fun yet?"
almost every hour of the shift.
Does she also say, "Another day in paradise," and TGIF?
Hump day. There is this one man in the office, I'll call him Tim. Tim is a very elderly and angry man, known for this woman's cardigan he wears every day, as well as his many heated conversations, of which the snippets are pure gold. Last week, out of the blue, he proclaims he was up to his knees in blood while on a phone call. Yesterday, he said he would rather be doing blow down the streets of New York. One of my favorites included, "Sometimes in life you're the chip, sometimes you're the dip. I love and fear Tim." Detox caseworker here. I work with that girl who talks about her failing marriage, how much she hates her kids, and how much she hates working where she works. She's a very odd person. One day she loves her husband and talks about how much of a god he is, yet she hates her marriage. She talks about what little SOBs her kids are, yet she wants another one, making it 6 children. Lazy as frick, and she's that girl at the yearly Christmas party where she's the only one that goes over her limit and starts spilling secrets people have told her. Not to anyone's surprise, she's gotten many of her coworkers to hate her guts upon walking in the door.
Why do social services workplaces always hire the crazies? Does someone in HR say,
"Oh yeah, you came to the interview with mismatched shoes and a transformer in your hair, you're caseworker material"? Trust me, I'm a caseworker, no one wants this job. It's hard as frick and emotionally taxing. We have insane turnover, leading to some questionable hires. For some reason, social workers are enshrined in my mind as being very level-headed, if bureaucratic and dull people. Maybe that's Hollywood influencing me. So there are nutters among them, I guess, judging by those last posts. My boss asked me what my Christmas plans were. I told him I'm Jewish. He, in all seriousness, asked me if I would be more comfortable in accounting.
Do you work for Michael Scott? Is he Jewish? That sounds like something any number of funny Jewish guys I know would kill to deadpan.
A salesman who occasionally comes through and hassles us. The first time he asked what I was working on, I didn't realize what he was up to. I thought he needed help with something, and of course, I'm glad to help. He keeps asking things like, "You're not busy. You don't have anything going on?" It seemed odd how many times he asked, but still, I'm thinking he wants help, is trying to be polite, and is worried he's interrupting me. I get started on what he asks, and he leaves. Next thing I know, my boss arrives asking why I have nothing to do. Thankfully, my boss is pretty cool, so nothing bad happened. The salesman is not our boss or even in our department, yet he occasionally comes through checking on us and asking things like, "Why does that job take 2 people?" He's such a prick.
If he was doing his job, he shouldn't have time to nitpick. He's trying to make himself look good by making everyone else look bad. Unfortunately, he will probably end up being middle management. Most bosses love suck-up snitches and don't realize the rat doesn't do their own job efficiently.
There's a dude that watches videos of God knows what and screams along to them. I think he's watching wrestling or maybe boxing or something, because every now and again he'll just shout, "Oh, put him on a body bag!" Or, "Oh, Queen, B!" and start dusting off his hands loudly and laughing. It's fricking bizarre. The guy that I work with has only one eye and can drive a forklift better than I ever could with 2. Great guy, too.
But how does he wink at cute girls while he's forklifting?
Every single day, he comes in and spews some bullcrap. He's just invested another $175K in some property. He just had a genius moment on the way into work and will now be able to solve the energy crisis. He's just met some famous smart person, like Elon Musk, who said he was the smartest person they'd ever met. This isn't occasionally, this is all the time. Literally every single day. You can't even talk with this guy. It's so irritating. He follows me everywhere, and you try to have some normal conversation, and he just spews more bullcrap. I tried talking with him once and said, Well, my car has this thing going on with it, I may need to take it to the shop. He replies with, oh, that reminds me, my boyfriend is having the Lamborghini dealer come over tonight. He's having a midlife crisis, but work just gave him another $2 million bonus because he's such an amazing architect. Frick this guy.
Start actively perusing these conversations. Ask for him to expand on the details of the story to see how ridiculous they get. For instance, you could have asked him, oh, your boyfriend's an architect. Has he worked on anything I'd recognize? To which you would likely get an outlandish answer, which you could make the person expand upon again. It's like a game.
Oh, he always comes up short when we ask for proof. He kept going on once about his lake house at Lake Tawakoni, which he put up on an Airbnb. One of the other guys I worked with started bugging him for the link to look it up. He wanted a place to go to, with his wife on a weekend getaway. Crazy coworker comes back and says, oh, you couldn't afford it, and says the insurance on the boat rental alone is $3,500 a day. Still never came back with an address. We kept pushing him on it. Oh, it's booked until October. This was back in the spring. We still haven't gotten an address on that house. One of the guests on Airbnb rented the house and a huge party with 100 plus people, and they broke sinks off the walls and burned the couch on the front lawn. His maid, who he hired to look over the place, called and told him about all the damages. She sent him photos, but when we asked to see them, oh, I don't have them on me. Really? Did she send them via UPS? How do you not have photos on you in this day and age? Anyway, we asked about them the next day. Oh, Kevin, his boyfriend, wouldn't let me show them to anyone, and miraculously insurance sent them $45,000 within 2 days for all the damage. Never seen insurance work that fast before. Someone found his boyfriend's resume online, but he's not an architect. Something similar to interior design, I forget the title, and he had done stuff like he designed the layout of some gas stations.
You're going about it wrong. You don't want proof of the story, you want the most outlandish, impossible story you can pull from the guy.
This guy gets it. I had a coworker snowboard down a mountain in front of an avalanche after he was launched from a helicopter. That's what I get for trying the bunny slope. Frick you, CB. I put my boogers on the adjustment levers of your chair and then frick up your settings when you're in the bathroom. I'm a waiter, and one of my coworkers is an Italian old man that's so close to retirement that he doesn't care anymore. He pretends to pee into wine buckets by turning his back to the customers and emptying a water bottle into them. He prank calls the restaurant by calling and going, go freak yourself, before hanging up. Smokes constantly and is never on time.
I love the too close to retirement to care guy. I used to work with one who would answer the phone with, hey, what are you up to besides being ugly? Everyone knew his sense of humor though, and he was much beloved.
I work in an office. I have an older lady, 45 to 50, next to me who says, awesome sauce, at least 5 times a day. I'm thinking about quitting because of her.
Bring a liquor flask to work. Every time she says, awesome sauce, yell out, woo, there it is, and take a swig. Pretend like it's normal and never explain why. She'll either stop saying it or you'll get so drunk you stop caring. Either way, mission success.
I feel like there's some differing opinion on what constitutes that guy or girl. I honestly just thought it was some kind of weird pervert who constantly turned everything towards their nice interest. Turns out it might just be any sort of weirdo. My old coworker. I couldn't tell if he was a mad genius or a man-child. I have not and will not meet anyone else in my life who is anything like this guy. He, 1, was so American that he told me he would show up to my birthday party in a Stars and Stripes banana hammock cawing like an eagle. He moved before my birthday, or I think he actually would have. 2, took the fan and some wires out of a recycled PC. He somehow found a D battery somewhere and hooked it up to the wires so the fan would run. He would lightly fan people as they worked, sometimes right in front of our customers. You nice and cool yet? 3, drafted and made a falcon talon on the end of a magnetic tentacle. The talon is a phone holder. He has a patent and is marketing it soon. There's also a version with a monkey tail on the end of a raptor jaw. 4, he put a rubber band ball on a paperclip, then impaled it to the ceiling of the break room. Turned on the strobe function on his phone's flashlight and opened a Pandora Club playlist. Told everyone they deserved a disco party and would shriek when someone started to take it down. 5, hugged an old man who went off on another coworker because he just needs a friend. 6, strategically planned out how to travel from the front of the store to the back using only the rafters. A section of it he needed to turn into a liquid. He drew a diagram. 7, printed a bunch of rebel flags on the store printer and gave them to our black supervisor, saying she needed to hand them out to preserve his heritage. He was Southern and completely sarcastic. 8. Printed a banner-sized check made out to him for millions of dollars. Subject was, winner for the biggest poop. Plenty more too, I just can't keep them all straight. I miss that guy. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I don't work there anymore, but when I was a delivery driver for a pizza company, there was a guy who just didn't give a frick. The boss had the hots for him, so he got away with so much crap. Never arrived when he was supposed to, always got to go home on time, or early if he wanted, even if we were completely backed up. Whenever he closed, he never cleaned in the back kitchen, so instead of firing him, his shifts got changed to opens. He would take random breaks and play guitar and sing loudly about getting wasted and smoking green herb in the storeroom, loud enough for the customers to hear. At one stage, he even peed on the floor in the room where we made the dough. After a few months, he went on holiday. He never came back, but his name was always on the roster. The stories I have about that place are amazing. I'm thankful I don't work there anymore, but also glad that I did. Worked or trained with a lady once who said bonus in place of any kind of hooray type statement. I just found $1 on the ground. Bonus! I'm taking my girlfriend out on a date tonight. Bonus! I just purchased a delicious beverage from the vending machine. Bonus! I didn't get hurt doing this mildly unsafe task. Bonus! It was getting to be a little much, but she quit very shortly after being hired. I was so thankful.
She quits. Bonus.
I have an older lady of the same age range as well who says, "Oh, Milanta," all the time. All the time. Thankfully, I don't see her too often since we work in different departments. When I do see her, this inevitably is something she says. I don't get it. How does that phrase become such a crucial part of someone's vocabulary? Oh man, we have the over-opinionated oversharer. We stopped using her real name and now just refer to her as TMI. Hey, did you send that document over yet?
Well, I would have if it weren't for the fact that this guy I've been seeing for the past 3 days has this brother who's a total D-bag. Wasn't even considerate of my gluten allergy over the weekend, which really sparked my ADHD, so I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes on Saturday, even though the liberals keep raising the taxes on them, which actually worked out because I lost 3 pounds from not having an appetite.
Okay, can you just send it over? This is every conversation. She sounds like she has the most confusing political views ever.
Sounds like my coworker. We'll call her Carla. We had a girl transfer to our office last week, and Carla had already told her about the UTI she had, like 4 months ago. I've personally heard or overheard the story about her food poisoning incident at least a dozen times. I don't think anyone needs to hear it was coming out of both ends, ever? Carla was out sick yesterday after having an allergic reaction to something, so heaven help us today if she returns. See also that time she tried to get something off the top shelf and fell and hit her elbow. The 3 times she's had kidney stones, her 2 UTI infections, food poisoning, the 24 mosquito bites she got on vacation, and a partridge in a pear tree. The guy who eats several hard-boiled eggs every morning for breakfast in an open cubicle environment. The smell is somehow worse on Monday mornings. I used to work with a guy who would only eat 4 hard-boiled eggs for lunch each day. But he'd only ever get through 3 of them, and he'd walk around the office trying to hand people his extra egg. That was the most normal part about the guy, I'm afraid. Can I offer you a nice egg in this trying time?
Is he perhaps eating 4 dozen eggs? If so, he might just be trying to get large. But beware, once he's grown, that number will jump to 5 dozen eggs. Naturally, he'll become approximately the size of a flat-bottomed river vessel. Whenever he wants to say something, he pauses in the middle of the sentence like he's waiting for you to react to every bit of information.
So, my son was watching Netflix,
Pauses for 4 seconds, eye contact all the time,
and he told me to join him.
Pauses again,
to start watching Jessica Jones.
He usually does it with a glass of water and takes a sip during the pauses. I used to work with a guy who would eat those Vienna sausages out of the little can, then slurp the juice in the bottom.
Oh, no.
I cringed so hard at that I think I pulled a muscle in my jaw. There is a special place in hell for people who eat loudly in a busy workplace. I think honestly even hearing the word slurp makes me shudder and gag slightly. But that might just be me being a type A weirdo. I like all of my coworkers. The woman I couldn't stand was HR from corporate. She was here for a week and I could not wait for her to leave. She made sure that we knew she didn't care about me and the other lady, both temporary employees, even though we're likely to be hired. She would not stop talking about how she's single and men were hitting on her in all the countries she had visited on her vacation. She constantly talked about how she's trying to lose weight, but kept eating the fattiest crap I've seen, all while complaining about America's eating habits. She took over our marketing manager's office for the week because she was too lonely in the back area. Sorry, the graphic designer and I are busy working. She would not shut the frick up about shopping. She didn't understand that I don't have extra money to spend. She cooked horrible-smelling fish in the microwave, then proceeded to burn some popcorn later. She kept stealing all of my soft Kleenexes I bought from home. She cancelled our work Halloween party. Good lord, she was unpleasant. Apparently, I live in a TV show and no one told me. When I was in the Air Force, there were plenty of these types of people, but there was one legend who'll outlive them all. Let's call him Vic. Vic was in his late 30s maybe, balding, overweight, annoying, and generally the worst NCO the US Air Force ever saw. Here's a list of his accomplishments. Vic routinely practiced terrible weapon discipline. He would constantly have his weapon pointed at you. He couldn't even clear his weapon to enter the chow hall. A Marine had to do it for him. I had never been so embarrassed to be an airman in all my service. Vic somehow came back to the site with junk every single day. We have no idea where he found it or what half of it was. He once brought back a gigantic Donkey Kong-looking hammer, no explanation for its intended use. Another time he came back with a belt of ammunition that he'd found on the road. Yeah, sure, you know, it's a war zone, people get blown up every day by improvised explosives on the side of the road. Just go pick up something like that. Vic would argue with you about where your hometown is located geographically. Vic was responsible on more than one occasion for complete mission failure. The specifics I can't quite divulge, but rest assured he was brilliantly stupid. Vic could barely speak or write English. He was born in Florida. His ancestors came to this country a couple of hundred years ago. Vic dropped a T-wall, gigantic concrete wall, on a tent with a front loader. Almost killed someone. Vic wore my uniform top back to his barracks, but then later denied the whole thing. Vic was fired from his position twice on 2 separate deployments. Saw him a year later, he had been promoted. This lady at my office has freakishly good hearing and preemptively does weird helpful things for people. Like yesterday, an intern asked one of our agents for the agent's code. Her office is at the other end of the suite, but somehow she heard, wrote down each agent and their code on a post-it, and brought it to the intern's desk. If she overhears someone speaking with service ops about a specific form, she'll quietly email them a copy. Little things like that. People think it's super creepy. I only know this because it's me and I just overheard my coworkers talking about how weird I am. Oh.
Maybe you should stop for a week and see what happens. Maybe they'll miss it, or you can be lazier.
Don't stop doing what you're doing. Just pipe up and say,
"Oh, I have that info for you right here."
People will appreciate you without the creep factor ever being added in. My boss leaves notes at my desk for me every so often, ranging from "you look good today" to "I fricking hate you." My personal favorite, he once wrote "love you" on a sheet on my desk, then went to my coworker's cube next to mine, and I could hear him writing something. When he left, the coworker and I both asked, "What did he write on your desk?" and showed each other simultaneously. His said, "You, not so much." Oh man, let me tell you about Hugo. Where to begin? It's holiday party time, and the ice is all frozen into one big chunk. Not to worry though, Hugo is on it. Here's a big rusty hammer borrowed from one of the foresters. Don't worry about using a dirty hammer to break up something you're about to put in your drink. A little iron oxide in your soda is good for the constitution. Am I right? What's that you say? A cake for someone's retirement? How nice! Hugo will cut himself a nice big slice, then lick the frosting off the knife before putting it back in the cake. Yes, we all saw you do that, and yes, we're going to wash the knife. Heck yes, another holiday party. What is this item on the buffet? Will Hugo like it? Guess he had better stick his fork in there to grab a piece to try while standing in line. Oh no, Hugo has a cold. Better go gurgle some water in the kitchen sink, then spit it back out. Oops, he forgot to take a sponge everyone uses to clean their dishes out of the sink first. Oh well, better just leave it in there. It's all dirty now. Bonus time, I also work with Jacob. One day, a mutual coworker left a salad out on her desk because she had an errand to run during lunch. When she came back, half of the salad was gone. What's this? A note from Jacob? Apparently the salad looked too good and he couldn't help himself. Schlepp brings in 2 bags every day filled with his crap, like a bagman: notebooks, clothes, food, toys, junk. He leaves little bits of paper around, upon which little pieces of his mind spill out, like the third chair from the window. What the frick does that even mean? He writes Doctor Who fanfiction, and we got to read some once. Not good. Smiles and mumbles and never looks anyone in the eye. I think he's gonna kill us someday. Guy openly declared he took the job because he expected it to be nothing but ugly, fat women. He obviously meant it because he couldn't work with any of the more attractive women in the office. Constantly told one that she was too pretty to be smart, and then would switch it up by telling her how stupid she was. Constantly scoffed at anyone who offered him help, and never hesitated to mention that he had a master's degree. Told me, "Don't frickin' argue with me," around co-workers when I corrected him. He was wrong. Had a loud booming voice in an office where voices carry, and would stand in your office saying the most inappropriate things like, "I like to bang pregnant girls because they can't get pregnant." Came in one day after being at an adult club all night and walking to work after his car broke down with a sunburn on one half of his body. He didn't hesitate to tell everyone exactly what had happened. A girl was stretching and had her arms extended out, and he, likely purposefully, walked crotch first right into her hand and proclaimed loudly, "Stop touching my Johnson!" Had some neurological issue which caused him to shake a bit, not Parkinson's, pretty regularly, and would compound that by downing no less than 5 cups of coffee before 10 a.m. until he was a total mess. Updated service tickets with very helpful and professional comments like, "Dropped in your queue like it's hot," and "Solved this problem like a boss." When he was finally confronted about the list of transgressions, he confided, "I'm surprised it took them so long to talk to me about it." What's the strangest thing about the UK as an outsider? Saying "Way" when someone falls over. Or drops a glass. People apologizing when passing in front of you at the supermarket. Feels good though.
I'm in the UK from Canada. I can't imagine anywhere not apologizing anytime you mildly inconvenience another person.
UK here, but my American ex seemed surprised that while "let's go for a pint after work" in the US meant "let's go get a drink and then head home," here in the UK it's more like "let's go get smashed after work." Apparently you really mean that crap when you say one drink.
I was gonna deny that, but it's actually kinda true. I live in New York, and when a friend says, "Wanna grab a beer?" it means 3 to 4 beers at the most. If we're looking to get sauced, we always just say, "You want a drink tonight?"
This would be a convo with my other half. Me, "Babe, I'm off out." Her,
"Out, yeah, not out, out."
"Yeah, babe, just out."
"Alright, see you soon."
For context, out being a pub or a mate's house for a few, and out being clubs or a 12-hour bender or whatnot.
Putting an X at the end of their text messages.
I didn't even realize this was a UK thing. I thought everyone did it. Important to note the levels of affection the amount of kisses provided indicates. X is a casual acquaintance, 2 X's a friend, 3 X's definitely shagging and or in love, 4 X's, anything more than 3 X's puts you firmly in the psychopath spectrum in my opinion. There's a guy I work with and his wife sends about 20 X's after every single message, even if it's just like a sentence long. Something's going wrong there.
Yeah, the meanings of 1 or 2 are a bit fluid, but if you go for 3, that's definitely a leap beyond basic friendship and courtesy.
Now you mention it, a lot of my British friends do this, and I'd never really clicked that it was a common link. Interesting. And I should clarify, despite what a lot of commenters seem to think, I'm not actually British, so I'm being as educated here as any of you are.
I just think the names they give to places are so oddly fascinating, like Stoke-on-Trent or Kingston-upon-Thames or Aldermanbury Square. They all just seem so whimsical and full of history.
UK place names can tell you so much about the place. The Anglo-Saxons were fastidious with some of the geographical naming conventions, so the form of hill they used can tell you what kind of hill it is, whether it's steep, plateaued, etc. So like Swindon came from a name that meant a plateaued hill with pigs on it. Or you can tell whether Vikings had a prominent presence there. Like all the seaside towns up north that end up B are using an Old Norse name element, and Skegness might once have been a home to a very bearded person because of the Old Norse hweg element. Possibly the skeggy bit could also just be a name.
There are some excellent ones in the southwest where I'm from. Budleigh Salterton, Cheriton, Fitzpaine, Westward Ho! The exclamation mark is actually part of the spelling. Lustly Cleave.
All of the accents in a relatively small area. I'm a Brit and I live in the Midlands and go to university. I only live, and grew up, 45 minutes from my uni, but everyone from that area sounds completely different from me, and occasionally I'll have a communication breakdown with the locals as we just cannot understand each other's certain terms or slang. The food alters an awful lot too. At uni, I can get oatcakes really easily. They're everywhere, it's bliss, but back home it's difficult to find any. I'm obsessed with British panel shows. I don't know how people over there feel about them, but I'll spend hours on YouTube watching old episodes of Cats Does Countdown and Would I Lie to You? These are just quality comedy for me and far better than all the dumb reality shows on TV here in the States. Panel shows are popular here, but they're seen in the comedy scene as a necessary evil to get popular enough to go on tour. Watch UK Taskmaster if you want to see the greatest show ever made. Alright, this is wildly inaccurate. Every person on those shows will have been touring and doing the circuit for years.
As an outsider who does watch a lot of them, it seems like panel shows are viewed as a reliable source of income you get to have when you're already popular. Downplaying everything, like, yeah, that's alright food, when in fact it was an excellent dining experience.
It's out of love for the ironic statement. Bit windy in a force 9 gale. You think there's an issue when the house is on fire? You've got red on you when you're covered in blood. Or when things are horrendous. That stiff upper lip. My mate was 30 when she found out that her dad had lung cancer. He deteriorated rapidly while she was pregnant and died just 2 days before her baby was born. I went over to look after the kids so she could deal with the funeral arrangements, etc. When I asked how she was doing, she sighed and said, "I'll admit, I'm not great." She obviously cried, grieved, and talked through her feelings, but when she had crap to be getting on with, she was amazing at powering through what needed to be done. For anyone wanting an insight into British understatement, here's something to keep in mind. In everyday language, not bad means, hey, this is pretty good. It can also mean that something's not actually bad, but not great either. It's down to the tone of voice. Meanwhile, not great means awful in no uncertain terms. For a person to describe themselves as honestly not great or not doing great means their world is out of kilter and they're dealing with an existential crisis which may well haunt them for the rest of their lives and would possibly send others to their knees. Tea and sympathy is required in these circumstances. Using the tube during rush hour as a tourist was like a sci-fi dystopian novel. Everyone was dressed the same and completely silent except for a few people saying sorry to anyone who touched them or that they touched. And nobody laughed when the posh English lady on the intercom kept saying, "Next stop, Cockfosters. Transfer here for Tooting Broadway. Mind the gap." There's actually a reason for this. A lot of dystopian writing was based on English conformity in the world of work. The most obvious examples I can give is Orwell's 1984, where conformity is displayed truthfully among the elitism which still exists in Britain even now. Yep, it's strange being in a country like the UK where we all technically speak the same language, but the subtle differences and new systems make it so alien. And the commuting systems are the peak of it, in my mind. Having tea. When I went over to the UK for a holiday, the people who I visited asked me what I wanted for tea. Like an ignorant fool, I replied with rooibos. They were not asking what kind of tea I'd like, apparently. I felt a bit stupid to be honest, but at least I know something new now. Nah, it's all good fun. I love laughing and talking about different terminology and cultures, like chips and crisps, car park, parking lot. Actually, even here people do argue about what tea means. Even bread rolls, buns, cobs. Here in the deep south of England, we use tea to mean dinner. It's just contextual, like no one ever is confused about which tea the person means. I watch a lot of Premier League and thus watch a lot of fan channels on YouTube. I'm amazed at how quickly you guys can pull the most unique insults out of thin air and continue like it's nothing. Lukaku is crap, mate. He couldn't hit water from a boat. Captain, he couldn't lead a pack of ants to a picnic. There's obviously better ones, but I'm not as quick-witted as the Brits, so I'm not exactly doing it justice. But I love your humour and basically everything around football culture. Could fall into a barrel full of breast and come out sucking his thumb was a classic one of these.
This is magic. This is how words were originally intended to be compiled.
Hate to tell ya, I went to a ton of games a couple of seasons back and we aren't really being witty more than we remember 2 or 3 really solid lines and use them for a variety of players. Plus a big umbrella term for analysis is just calling them wank.
Frickin' Ozil, he's frickin' wank, mate.
Mesut Ozil in probability isn't actually bad. He's a world-class midfielder and a World Cup winner. However, should he have a bad game, he's thereby relegated to wank until he has a good run of form, which is known as doing alright. If he actually has a good season, he will basically be deified and have songs created about him. See Mohamed Salah for Liverpool the last 2 seasons. Actually, that's something the Terraces, football crowd, does over here that you don't see in America, is songs sung about individual players. They can be good or bad. When I went to see Everton a few years back, the crowd was singing to Tim Howard to the tune of London Bridge is Falling Down. Timmy Howard's got Tourette's, got Tourette's, got Tourette's. Timmy Howard's got Tourette's, frick, crap, wanker. I thought the strangest thing in the UK was the bars and nightclubs with signs saying to not attack paramedics. Unfortunately, all too necessary from what I've heard. For some inexplicable reason, a lot of paramedics have been attacked when trying to help people. I think it's because people fear them getting the police involved if you've got substances on or in you. In reality, paramedics only give a crap what substances you've got so they can try to help you. No use thinking someone is having a heart attack when they really just need naloxone. Such polite insults. I was watching some Brexit crap a while ago, and some fella told another dude that he was screaming across the bar in the most eccentric fashion. American here who's been on and off following Brexit. I love watching the House of Commons and especially Burko. In Congress, there's the idea of order and civility and not talking while someone else is. Over there's a whole lot of rebelling and sass, and I love it. I'm British, and the only insults I ever hear are long lists of things that would get you demonetized on YouTube. I was in Bath yesterday, and some dude, probably in his early 20s, quite posh, in a suit, wandering down the main shopping street, having to stop and recalibrate himself every few steps. It was only about 5 p.m. Nice counterpoint to the tourists and the beautiful 18th century buildings. He's just practicing his silly walk. He was on his way to the Ministry of Silly Walks to get a research grant. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. The pub is the most culturally UK place and queuing is the most UK behaviour. Yet there's no queuing for a drink in a pub. It's a mental queue. Everyone knows who at the bar is to be served next. Sorry love, he's before me. Until you get the slag who knows full well he's cutting in front of you and others. The bar staff usually clock who's next anyway and ignore them, or you just have to sort it yourself. Oi mate, not you, and a thumb over to the person you know who is in front of you. As a resident of the Nordic countries, I would contest that queuing is more British than Nordic, especially Sweden. It's like a gosh darn religion over there. I've only been to London, but well-dressed people passed out drunk in alleyways at 11 a.m. Also, the very defined rules about when you can speak to each other. People are very friendly within the bounds of the rules, but literally panic if someone engages with them outside of these bounds. Also, the drinking culture. Just wow. I want to clarify that I mean wow in both a positive and negative sense. A cleaning lady scared out of her mind by 20 drunks in a male bathroom was bad, but being able to drink from a bottle of wine as I wandered around the city with my friend and not have to worry about the cops was fantastic. Alright, now people are writing to me that it's illegal to walk around town drinking, but I will counter that I walked past whole groups of people on the sauce on the sidewalk, so I guess that if the police were enforcing that one, I guess I was the least of their worries. Okay, more people have written into me, and apparently it's not illegal. Good to know. I gotta say that for the most part, I adore the British. Got to say that as a southerner, this is quite true down here, but as soon as you get up north, everyone is much friendlier and loves a chat. I met a dude from up north the other day, and he said the same thing without me mentioning my thoughts, whether positive or negative. He told me that he was very sorry that my whole perception of the UK had been formed in London. As a Brit, reading all of these stories has been a real treat. It might just be lunchtime beer talking, it's Friday after all, but I've really enjoyed myself. Cheers. Constantly making jokes about pedos. Dark humor in general. One of my mates was chatting up a girl in a pub once, and once he nipped to the loo, I went over and told her she'd better watch him as he was a convicted pedophile. She shot off back to her mates and wouldn't talk to him again. When I told him why, he just laughed and called me the C-word. I'm Portuguese and I lived in the UK for 2 years. The use of cheers confused me so much. When I'm supposed to use it? Is it a thank you? A goodbye? A hello? I'm supposed to reply cheers in return? I know it's probably because of a long shared cultural history and that most people live and die in the same areas they're born, but I don't understand the different stereotypes based on towns, cities, and villages. I'm not talking really big generalities like people in the north are friendlier or people in London are more hurried and fast-paced. I'm not talking about large regional differences. I'm talking stereotypes based on specific, very small places. Well, he was from Derbyshire, collective eye roll, so you know how he was. You know how all those Yorkshiremen of a certain age act. All the heads nod in unison. I grew up in Kent, so I was not familiar with how those chavs from Milton Keynes spoke. Multiple harumphs. I have no fricking clue what being from a specific small town or village means, but it seems everyone in the UK knows all the different stereotypes and idiosyncrasies of every village in the whole gosh darn country. It's basically a class thing. Everyone thinks the next town over is a crap hole, but if the big city 2 towns over says the same thing, then you all unite against them, and so on. Pull cord switches, mostly in bathrooms. Where I come from, we only have attached to the wall switches, except for maybe some super old lamps. One thing I can't wrap my head around is how people go partying wearing nothing but a shirt or small dress, regardless of the weather, which is often quite cold, especially in, winter. I observe large groups of such people every weekend. They're not even carrying jackets or anything, and they're taking the bus. This would be semi-understandable if they took cabs everywhere and literally didn't spend more than a couple of minutes outside. I've been living in the UK for 5 years, and what still gets me is people saying, "You all right?" instead of "How are you?" For me, the "you all right" makes me think I look sad or sick. It's weirdly accusatory, even though I know it just means "How are you?" We have that in Cumbria too, a whole conversation played out as "Right, right." Thank you, and most of the time when they say it to each other, it doesn't even seem to be a question, just 2 people saying "all right" to each other, not answering the question and moving on to the next part of the chat. Here in Ireland, Dublin anyway, we dropped the "you." We just say "all right," and the reply is also "all right." If you're not all right, you don't mention it. American living in London for a few years now. One of the biggest things is definitely the drinking culture and how much it's embedded in all of society. I thought coming from the States that we drank a lot, but here it's on a different level. It's very common to have a pint or 2 during lunch breaks before going back to work. Pubs are on every corner, and the public drinking laws are astounding for an American. The sense of orderliness and politeness. Brits are amazing, diligent with following the rules. They queue quietly for public transportation, stand on the right, and don't outwardly complain when something goes wrong, though they're the best at tutting under their breath. Keep calm and carry on really is practiced in every part of life here. There's a sense of collectivism that I sometimes find strange when coming from a country that prides itself on individualism. Humor. The British humor relies completely on sarcasm, while American humor is more in-your-face slapstick. They each have their place and time, but sometimes it can feel exhausting to constantly have to unpack British comedy or humor due to its constant push for double entendres, ambiguity, and innuendos. Innuendo. I feel far too British to agree with the above comment and then chuckle at yours. As a Dutch person, the same sense of orderliness really struck me as well. It's like London is insanely crowded hell, though Amsterdam is worse, but everyone is doing their best to make it easier for each other. If the escalator sign says to stand on the left and walk on the right, or vice versa, people actually do what it says. It's amazing. It's great, but it leaves us with incredibly short fuses in cultures that don't have these customs in place. I'm a Brit living in China. I have to drink at least twice the tea I used to in order to recover from my subway journeys. If you would just bloody wait for me to alight the train, there will be ample time for you to board without having to push into me. So I'm British and I have an American friend I compare cultural notes with. One of my weirdest was when I mentioned finding a postbox from Victoria's reign. She was like, "You mean your mailboxes carry information about the current leader of your country?" To which I replied, "Of course they do, it's the Royal Mail." Postboxes note the E, 2, and R and crown at the base, indicating it was placed in Elizabeth II's reign. The royal family. Are they just mascots of the UK, or do they hold any political power? Officially, the Queen does hold some political power, but she chooses not to exercise it, as she's required to be politically neutral. This is mostly relevant when it comes to passing legislature. Officially speaking, it requires the monarch's consent before a new piece of legislature is confirmed, but no monarch has actually declined to do so in more than 3 centuries. There are some other parts of the process of government that require her consent or participation, but these are mostly ceremonial, such as the opening of each parliamentary session, think of these like school semesters, or the official appointment of the Prime Minister. In most other respects, they do act as mascots, though many of them also manage various aspects of the Crown Estate, which involves managing businesses and charity outreach programs, maintaining property and land, etc. Many of them also hold, or have held, positions in the military, though I think most British Prime Ministers have said that they really valued talking things over with the current Queen at their weeklies, as she was such a confidential, neutral, experienced, and pretty wise and level-headed person, except for when it comes to her children. I suspect Charles, if he doesn't pop his clogs before Liz does, will be much more of a pain in the arse. Hi, I'm from Germany and have spent some time in the UK. The one thing that was weird but nice was that people are polite when it comes to using public transportation. One time, the most annoying teenagers on the bus I was on stood up and left their seats as soon as two old ladies got on the bus. I find fascinating the current hatred and rivalry between the different countries of the UK. The Scottish government seems to despise the central UK government, which is England-dominated. In fact, it's really weird how even the Welsh, and to some extent the Republican Northern Irish, resent the domination of England in the UK as a whole. Weirdly enough, the English don't have their own devolved parliament, so the UK legislates for the whole of Britain as well as England-specific issues, giving rise to the West Lothian questions. Just a century ago, it seemed that whether Scottish or Welsh, everyone had no problem with being called British back then, when the British Empire was at its peak. Except the Irish, of course. Well, I studied there for a year, and I've been there countless times before, and after, I'm astounded at how much junk food there is everywhere. The first thing I was told when I moved there was, look out for chavs. I didn't know what chavs were, but not even 5 minutes after I arrived there had been two chavs fighting outside the supermarket right next to where I lived, with blood splatters still on the pavement when I walked to the supermarket. A little bit later, I learned quickly that you needed to avoid them at most cost. What I found fascinating was that the chavs could be any age, young or old. But the weirdest thing for me with the UK is that for a city to get the status of a city, it needs to have a cathedral. So for a big town like Middlesbrough, they can never become a city unless this is changed. And there are over 200,000 people living there. Hey, pal, sounds like you were at the Teesside Uni. My own hometown, no less. Chavs are a scary type, but they're also quite a complex social group. Not all are equal. Fun fact, Middlesbrough does have a cathedral. It's been rejected for what we call devolved city status since 2012, largely due to mayoral and councillor arguments. UK local politics deserves its own thread. To be a city in the UK, you need either historically to be regarded as a city from before the 12th century or have been conferred city status by the government. Originally, the title of city was likely to be given to places with cathedrals, as they would be important settlements, but it's never been a prerequisite. I live near Brighton and Hove, which was granted city status in the 21st century, but doesn't have a cathedral. What is the most pathetic way someone has tried to assert dominance over you? I always feel like the guys who refuse to make room for you when walking by in the other direction are trying to assert their dominance and make themselves feel like hot crap. I never understood why people do that. I figured out the best way to handle this when I was in college and the sidewalks were narrow. Just stop walking and stand still. Now they're the only ones walking and have to go out of their way to avoid you, instead of them expecting you to move. He tried to drink water faster than me. No one drinks water faster than me. No one drinks a tall glass of water like Gaston. Worked as a lifeguard at a summer camp years ago. During safety training, we had to do a missing persons search, which required all available staff to join hands and walk from the beach to the water as far as we could, while feeling with our feet for the missing swimmer. During training, there was a sandbag we had to find. The guy next to me kept insisting on holding mine in a certain way because I will take the upper hand in this situation, said at me while staring down. Whatever, dude, we're theoretically looking for a drowned child right now. Earlier this year, my boss asked me to do something and then leaned over me and said, "You are going to do it." He was like literally leaning over me because he was 6'8". Dude acted like a cliché high school bully from an 80s movie and was like 40 years old, so I assume he was at some point. Anyways, he quit. I used to tend bar in Milwaukee, and there's nothing that triggers bros more than seeing someone drinking something that they personally don't like. I can't tell you how many arguments began with some guy, always unsolicited or unprovoked, mind you, feeling compelled to judge and educate other guys about what they're drinking or not drinking. You drink that? And it goes downhill from there. Nobody cares. Drink what you like and shut up. I was at a bar in Stevens Point and the barman whips out a skin flick mag asking if I want to read it. No thanks. Why not? Are you gay? He looked as if I'd offended his ancestors by not wanting to read his adult magazine in the middle of a bar. Yeah, I used to know cliché blokey wannabes growing up who had deluded themselves into thinking that this was a totally normal thing to do. Keep it private, folks. No friendship is enhanced by looking at naughty bits together. Literally last weekend, some really drunk dude who I've never met once or interacted with tried to fight me to impress the girls he was with. It was completely ridiculous, and his way of trying to initiate it was just to repeatedly body check me on the dance floor, which I ignored because I thought he was just being drunk and dumb. Turns out one of his friends had to stop him from blindsiding me with a sucker punch to the face, assuming he was able to aim that well. Some people do not mix well with alcohol, apparently. My husband is a tall dude and told me that while at university, he constantly had guys trying to pick fights with him at the bar. It was like they found the biggest guy there was and was like, "Yep, I'm gonna beat him up." My husband is the biggest softy though, so he would just kind of laugh and brush them off. I've worked at bars my whole life, and this is very common. If you're tall, you're a target. It makes no sense and has nothing to do with the personality of the tall guy. It's just what it is. It's even worse for bouncers. The mentality, which is probably subconscious, is that if you're an aggressive smaller guy and you fight a bigger guy, it's a win-win. Either you lost because he's bigger, or you won and took down the bigger guy. It's funny because over the years, I've never had a problem with big guys. The 6'5" dudes are fine. It's always the short dudes you have to kick out. People are weird. A former coworker, he would just stand in the way and refuse to move. Even if he wasn't in the way, he would purposefully get in the way. I work in a narrow kitchen, so you can imagine how annoying that could be. At one particular moment, I was carrying a bulky 20-pound box, and he decided to do that. I pretended not to see him and barreled into him. He fell over and got incredibly mad at me. Started talking about how I have no muscle. It was actually pretty funny. It was a display of the most fragile masculinity I have ever seen. Similar experience. I had a regular keg and one of those skinny kegs on my shoulders. I was hustling to get through the narrow kitchen to replace the blown kegs for the bartender. Idiot guy who did the block game did the same to me, and I definitely barreled into him. He proceeded to jump up and try to trip me in the bar, to which I dropped the skinny keg on his foot. Like, you see someone with heavy crap, don't be a butthole. Not me, but my wife. We were living in an apartment complex and my wife had just parked her car, was carrying groceries and my 2-year-old inside, and this guy stopped her and said, "That's my spot. You need to move your car now." We don't have assigned spaces, but my wife was caught like a deer in headlights and put all the groceries and my daughter back in the car and moved it, just so he could park his 10-year-old Cadillac CTS in his favorite spot. I always got home from work before this guy, however. I never directly confronted him. But from then on, that parking spot became my spot, and I parked there every single day for the next 2 years. I saw him out and about a few times, but thankfully being 6'1" and overweight and bearded, most people chose not to fight with me, even though I've never been in a fight and would be helpless in a confrontational situation. In junior high, I remember this one bully that would get on his tiptoes and puff out his chest like a gorilla, and get all in your face whenever he felt threatened. It was such a funny stereotype maneuver. He did that once to one of my friends as he was trying to start a fight. He'd spread his arms wide and push out his chest while aggressively asking, "You wanna go? Huh? You wanna go?" Without a word, my friend grabbed his collar and pulled him into a headbutt, knocking him to the ground, delirious in one hit. My friend, in fact, wanted to go. Plot twist. The guy was asking your friend to go to the prom with him. Double plot twist. The headbutt was actually a kiss, and the bully swooned. Sounds like my high school. A friend of mine was this short, about 5'6" at the time, built like a little tank wrestler who was a huge nerd. D&D, magic, you name it, he loved it. There was a giant football player, 6'4", who was a notorious jackass. Football player starts harassing my friend, calling him the usual, "I'm a big tough man," insults. My friend asks him to stop. The football player puffs up his chest and says, "You wanna frickin' go, little man?" My friend turns slightly and drives his elbow right into the guy's solar plexus. It's pretty hard to look tough when you're gasping for air like a fish out of water. Forgot to mention my friend had been talking about a new D&D campaign he was working on when this happened. One time at a house party, a few of us were talking to some girls, and one of the guys randomly started talking about how he does MMA. Then another guy joined in, and those two started wrestling in front of the girls. I don't think their shirts needed to come off, but what the frick do I know? Taking off your shirt is proper MMA procedure and culture. Leaving them on could have dishonored their whole family. This happened over D&D when my friend, who owns a store, let these guys we didn't know that well join our campaign. I don't know why I, out of the table, got singled out, but a girl walks in and this guy complained that I didn't order pizza for him. Said, "How about you go frick yourself," when I asked him if he wanted some of mine. Walked over behind me and, playfully, put his arms around my neck. I told him I'd punch him in the face if he did it one more time because I don't know who the frick he is. It absolutely ruined my day. By flicking my boy bosoms. I was standing in the breezeway outside a friend's apartment while in college, and a guy coming down the stairs from an upper floor kinda tripped near the bottom of the stairs and stumbled into me. It was clear that he was super drunk and immediately got aggressive. He was so worked up about being tougher than me that for some reason he started doing push-ups at me while me and my friends just laughed. Fortunately, his friends came and apologized and took him back up the stairs, but it was definitely the most bizarre assertion of dominance I've ever encountered. His lizard hindbrain is apparently of the Texas spiny lizard variety. They do push-ups at each other to defend their territories, which are frequently suburban driveways. I don't know about no lizards, but I can confirm for you all that a drunk push-up contest to assert dominance is pretty Texan. I don't know if push-upping spiny lizards are actually a thing or not, and you know what? I don't care to Google it, because finding out that they didn't exist would only be disappointing to me now. Generally, guys purposely bumping into you when you walk past them, especially if they're with friends. My high school was overcrowded, so hallways were always packed, but I always did my best to move for people or turn myself so people could get through. But I realized I was always the one moving for other people, so one day I decided not to move for people, and most of the guys I encountered in the hall would just run into me because they refused to move. Like, just move. My daily commute on the subway was like this, people standing directly in front of the doors and even trying to enter as if you were just a spectre image they can walk through. I used to move out of their way or excuse myself. Now I just do the same and walk through them if they refuse to move. I simply expect this to be an unfortunate normal part of my life going forward, lest I be the one knocked over or missing the opportunity to disembark again. I work in a grocery store and sometimes I help unload the delivery trucks when our delivery comes in on what we call cages, like a 6-foot cage on wheels, and obviously one that's full of toilet paper will be really light, and one filled with 2-liter bottles of juice are the heavy ones. The lift that lowers them from the truck has that patterned metal floor, and you have to pull the heavy ones hard just to get them off. Now, I'm 5'8" and don't have a lot of weight on me, but I can pull these cages off just fine. But there's a guy who's like 6'2" and is always trying to show how strong he is. So whenever I'm helping and he's there, he always insists that he gets the heavy cages and I get the little guy cages. Everyone agrees he needs to grow up. Guys like that are great though, because you can just chill and let them do all the annoying work if they feel the need to prove something.
This is brilliant. Subtly threaten their masculinity and watch them do all the hard work.
You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A friend tried to make himself look good in front of his crush by literally putting me in a random chokehold for a laugh. Turns out it was because I was talking to her. I had a girlfriend at the time, we were just talking. It wasn't a chokehold though, it was basically just a headlock, so I decided to correct him. I was fairly oblivious and didn't realize this was a failed alpha move. Creeped the crap out of his crush that he would do that out of nowhere, and she stopped talking to him. Apparently she quite liked him up until that point, so he kinda shot himself in the foot. Because romantic interests respond well to displays of unprovoked aggression and violence, right? Right?
I just love a man who can fly off the handle at any moment.
Was out having a drink, started chatting to the guy next to me when I learned that he too is a musician. He then tells me, "You're not a musician. I find it offensive when people tell me they're a musician when they haven't put in the time and dedication that I have." Okay, dude, come down off your ego trip. Jesus Christ.
What the frick? How the frick would he know how much time and dedication you put into it? Heck, for all you know, he hasn't put in any either. Frick, he isn't even devoted enough to music to prefer it to feeding his ego.
Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
I had someone stand on their tippy toes to seem taller when we were talking.
Talked about how the MBA program at his alma mater was superior to where I was getting my MBA. For clarification, he doesn't have and isn't working on an MBA, but wanted to be sure I knew he was better because he went to a school with a perceived better program. So when I was in the 8th grade, there was this one kid who hated me for no reason. I was really big for my age, and there was no way this 5'1" guy was going to fight me, so he did something so cringy I have no idea what he was going for. I was sitting at lunch with my friends, and this kid walks up to us and spits in my glass of milk and says in a very commanding tone, "Drink." I just stood up and the kid bolted. Got a good laugh out of it with my friend though. To be clear, I did not drink the milk. You just reminded me of the one time in high school a freshman sitting across from me, I was a senior, decided that bothering me was his ticket to alpha status or something. One day at lunch, he threw a curly fry into my drink and asked me what I was going to do about it. He had just gotten back from the snack bar with a couple of cookies and an unopened bottle of soda, so I just reached over and took those. I didn't really like the soda, and I only wanted one cookie, so I doled the rest out to my friends. He just laughed nervously. Once I realized he wasn't going to do anything about it, I thanked him for the cookie.
Freshman being a butthole. You gonna do something about it? Senior does something about it. Freshman surprised Pikachu JPEG.
When asked about what his hobbies are, he responded with, "Hobbies are for children and single women. I work."
You wanna know how cool I am? You wanna know how tough I am? I'm so tough that I have no life, interests, or friends.
Oh, fun. Sounds like the kind of guy who'll either work himself to death or suffer a complete mental breakdown 1 week into retirement. The type of person who after he retires will have no idea how to occupy himself, so he'll spend his time calling the police over minor noise complaints and hassling his neighbors over where his exact property line is. We had a candidate come into the interview and legit say that he wanted to sit behind the desk because he was going to be the one asking the questions to decide if he wanted to work with us. I think he'd gotten some bad advice about having confidence. I laughed, but our HR manager flipped out. The only time I've ever actually seen her call security.
What was the guy's reaction once he realized it was going so badly?
Oh, he commented, "Well, this is obviously a hostile work environment, blah blah blah."
Was on a 4-hour flight, in a 2-person row. The guy demanded to have full access to the middle armrest, would push my arm off it if I ever got near it.
Oh man, I was in the middle of a 3-seat row. The guy on my left was some kind of exec, checking his work email on his laptop. Anyway, after the first hour of armrest jockeying, I just asked him,
"Are we doing this the entire flight?"
He pretended to not speak English. The mother fricker was reading his emails in English and pulled the no hables card on me. He finally conceded the armrest after that. Yeah, I think it's common consensus that the person in the middle seat gets both their armrests, isn't it? It's one of those unspoken rules that you would feel like a jackass for trying to enforce, though. I was walking to my car after school and this guy was getting in his car and just yells at me, "You ugly as frick, bro." I flipped him off without even looking at him and he called me the B word and drove off. How petty do you have to be to tell someone minding their own business that they're ugly? People that shout out of cars are cowards.
Excuse me, they prefer the term scrub.
I was leaving a gas station once with a 6-pack of some craft beer to go watch a game at my friend's house, and a group of college kids were driving out of the parking lot, and one yelled out the window, "6-packs are for slang word for female anatomy." I guess the amount of beer I was planning on drinking that night wasn't adequate to his standards. Had a dude get mad at me for talking to his girl all the time. I was her econ tutor. I once tutored this truly clueless girl at general chemistry. She wanted to be a nurse and couldn't get past the first class, but whatever, I'll tutor you. She was, however, very pretty. Second tutoring session, she shows up with her boyfriend. Dude doesn't study, doesn't say a damn word the whole 2-hour session, just stares at me and her going over the basics of chemistry. Next class, same thing. Next class, I bring my girlfriend to have a stare-off with him. He got the message and left us alone.
If you can't trust your partner to spend 2 hours in a crowded university library without screwing someone else, you probably shouldn't be with that person.
I had a guy message me threats on Facebook because I'd been talking to his girlfriend. The thing is, his girlfriend is my cousin and I don't live in Alabama. I guess she couldn't speak to anyone at all.
A friend of mine had a girl send her a ton of nasty texts one day, totally out of the blue. "Stay away from him, he loves me, you're probably an ugly B-word, etc. My friend is the guy's aunt.
Was at a party and was given the task of handing out beers to people. This guy flipped his crap, saying he only drank real beer. Dude, it was cold and free. That's the best beer there is. A guy was mad at me while sitting at a light and was revving his engine. It sounded like he'd held it at the red line, and there was a big crack sound and smoke started pouring out the front of his car. The dummy had blown his engine.
That's when you throw your head back and laugh as you slowly accelerate forward in your 2013 Dodge Dart.
My neighbor in front of my house had a boyfriend that would literally rip his shirt off and come outside every single time I was in my front yard. It could be 7 a.m. or midnight, but it wouldn't matter to him. I could be walking to my car and here comes Mr. Globo Jim flexing all around his yard. He would immediately go back inside when I went back inside. This went on for almost half a year until one day I saw him hop into his mega-lifted truck and drive away never to be seen again. He did have some pretty sweet pecs though.
I would have spent a day fricking with him. Go outside a while and wait for him to come out, then just go back in until he leaves, then do it again.
Make a buff-looking scarecrow and leave it in your front yard. Or like a cardboard cutout of Ronnie Coleman. One night in college, me and my buddies were walking down the street at about 11:30 p.m. We were near a major university on a street that was almost entirely college kids renting. It was Friday night, warm, so lots of people were out drinking on patios, talking, playing drinking games, etc. Generally pretty chill. We're done pre-gaming at home and headed to a bar or something, I don't remember. Anyway, we're walking down the road and across the street there's some people on a patio. They yelled something at us, we weren't really listening, but the tone seemed friendly at least. Woo, yeah, college bro, am I right? Generally, kind of thing. So I yelled back, yeah man, cool beans, and returned to my conversation. Apparently this guy does not like beans, regardless of temperature, because the next thing I hear is, did you just frickin' say cool beans? And I see this perfect Skylar pop-collar college bro storming off his porch to come across the street at us, looking like I just peed in his Bud Light. I can only respond with a confused, yeah? My group stops. This dude is crossing the street at us looking like he wants to fight. Him? Say it again, bro. What did you just say? Some girl behind him. Just let it go, Blake, or Skylar or Chad, whatever he was called. They didn't mean it. Me. What? Really? My friend? What the frick? I said cool beans. Get the frick out of here, dude, before I kick your butt. Okay. Later, bro. And we walked off the street as he started angrily flexing in the middle of the street while his girlfriend is tugging his arm, trying to get him back into the house. We made it to the end of the block, about 3 more houses probably, before my entire group just broke down laughing at the absurdity of it. I really don't understand it. Was it supposed to be a prank? Was he just a drunk dude looking for a fight? Did he think I was intimidated? I'm not sure. Either way, cool beans and, did you just frickin' say cool beans? Are still a standard farewell among that group of friends. His whole family was killed in a freak chilled beans accident. His girl saying he didn't mean it is the most intriguing part of the story. Not me, but my dad. My dad has season tickets for the AHL hockey team in town. One day he was late for a game and arrived to see a teen in his seat with his girlfriend. My dad kindly asked him to move, explaining that those were his seats. The teen responded with a quick, "No, it's not." My dad then showed him his season ticket and pointed out on the kids' tickets that their actual seats were a few rows up. The kid got up and tried to square up to my dad. My father was just like, "Really, dude?" and ignored them. The girlfriend began screaming at my dad for being a butthole. Long story short, Dad kindly asked a kid to get out of his seat and the kid tried to intimidate my dad for this. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.